Chapter 4207. In the hands of Chiuya City's Luan family, Lingyin Zhu flame was only a refining flame. Even under the so-called fire control technique, it was only a fire controlling technique of Xiaoyu continent. However, in Xiaohua's hands, it was different. Xiaohua had already obtained fire, metal, wood, and earth, these four types of essences. With these four essences entering his body, Lingyin Zhu flame also triggered a mutation. This mutated Lingyin Zhu flame was already very different from the refining flame from before. Although it was not as powerful as the four-colored spiritual fire, it had already surpassed the scope of fire controlling technique of the Xiuzhen world. The instant Lingyin Zhu flame was born, the space outside the innate true water became scarlet red. When the acid that could even melt thunder touched the Lingyin Zhu flame, a sizzling sound of explosion was produced between the two. Waves of space ripples were revealed amidst the explosion and spread in all directions. Not only that, an even larger area of the sea of fire rushed into the wind and thunder. Pa 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 pa. Just like a bubble bursting, whether it was the thunder or the wind, they were all blown up by the Lingyin Zhu flame. In an instant, the entire space seemed to be about to collapse. Not only was there a violent vibration, countless explosions were produced continuously. An indescribable aura of destruction filled the entire space. The 10-headed Lion King was somewhat stuttering. It had just urged the wind and thunder to fall, but it was like cold water poured into a hot oil pan, causing even more explosions. Just as it was about to open its mouth to say a few words, Xiaohua's golden body had already taken shape. Xiaohua waved his two fists. Not only did he drive the innate true water, he also stirred up the Lingyin Zhu flame. Following his huge fists, the Lingyin Zhu flame rushed straight into the air. Hong! A muffled sound resounded. Wind and thunder splashed chaotically above Xiaohua's head. The entire space suddenly became quiet, and then it trembled even more violently. There was no need for Xiaohua to attack a second time. The 10-headed Lion King painfully begged for mercy. You, quickly spare your father. His grandmother, still calling yourself father? Xiaohua finally understood why the heaven-devouring beast called itself father. Because these strange beasts simply did not know the meaning of father. Tongue. Xiaohua coldly snorted. He punched the Lion King's head again and transmitted his voice. In front of this old man, you are only worthy of being called little. Yes, this little one knows his wrongs. Please spare my life. The bodies of the 10 Lion Kings were curled up into a ball within the space. How could they dare to say a single word? As it begged for mercy, it opened its mouth wide and said, "This lowly one doesn't dare to stop me. Please come out and head to the 9th floor." What old man? Xiaohua felt particularly awkward when he heard this. He berated, "Call me Taoist Master Xiao." Yes, Spiritual Master Xiao. The 10 Lion Kings hurriedly answered, but just as they finished speaking, they were stunned. What? You are also Taoist Master Xiao? Why does it seem different from the previous 2 Taoist Zhaos? Xiaohua was overjoyed. He withdrew his avatar and asked, "You've seen 2 Xiaozhenren before? How are they?" They are very powerful. After they reached here and defeated me, they stepped into the 9th floor. The 10-headed Lion King replied. As for what happened to them, I don't know. Unless I can defeat you and enter the 9th level, otherwise, I have no idea what the 9th level is like. Of course, if they were unable to defeat the 9th level, they would remain on the 9th level. As long as you leave this place and go to the 9th level, you will be able to see them. Seems like what Devouring Heaven said was right. Fellow Taoist Dragon Bloodline and fellow Taoist Phoenix Body have both arrived at Chao Tian Tower. Xiaohua thought to himself, however, I'm afraid that they don't understand the exquisite leaf scripture and fought their way here from the 1st floor of this pagoda. Since this Xiao found the right place, then that's good. That Devouring Heaven did not deceive this Xiao. Seeing that Xiaohua did not speak, the 10-headed Lion King was somewhat nervous. He whispered, Taoist Master Xiao, are you not going to the 9th level to find them? No hurry. Xiaohua said indifferently, this old man has a few questions to ask. If you answer them honestly, this old man will consider leaving. Otherwise, this old man will stay here. Every day when you are happy, you will set fire to it. Every day when you are unhappy, you will use your fist to smash it a few times? What? The 10-headed Lion King became anxious. Why are you always angry at me whether you are happy or not? Who asked you to swallow this old man? Xiao Hua said coldly. All right. If you have any questions, just ask. This little one will definitely answer. The 10-headed Lion King was helpless. He could only lower his head and admit defeat. Xiao Hua asked a few questions. They were all about Chao Tian Tower, pagoda and great desolate continent. What the 10-headed Lion King said was similar to what Devouring Heaven said. However, the 10-headed Lion King's strength was clearly stronger than Devouring Heaven. Therefore, he knew more than Devouring Heaven. For example, although the great desolate world was vast and boundless, the places where great desolate strange beasts could survive were only a few 100 million li away. If one went to other places, the environment would be even worse. Ordinary great desolate strange beasts would not be able to survive. Of course, the 10-headed Lion King did not know if there were even more powerful great desolate strange beasts. The 10-headed Lion King knew that within a few 100 million li, there were countless experts. The most powerful ones might be a few. One of them was the one that Xiao Hua and Devouring Heaven met earlier. The other few were tens of millions of li away. What kind of great desolate strange beasts were these few powerful experts? The 10-headed Lion King did not know. One moment they said it was a big eagle. The next moment they said it was a lion. The next moment they said it was an elephant leopard. In short, the 10-headed Lion King had never seen it before. Everything was just hearsay. As for Chao Tian Tower, the 10-headed Lion King was the same as Devouring Heaven. They did not know how it appeared. They only knew that there was some kind of opportunity here. They could obtain weapons that could increase their strength. And strength was the only way to survive in the great desolate world. Therefore, any great desolate strange beasts who heard this news would risk their lives to come to Chao Tian Tower to look for weapons. The 10-headed Lion King's strength was not bad. This time, when he saw the 7-colored light soaring into the sky, he immediately flew out of the cave. He killed many strange beasts along the way and arrived in front of the pagoda. The pagoda was divided into 9 floors. Each floor had a strange beast guarding the pagoda. Only by defeating the strange beast could one step into the next floor. Otherwise, one would have to stay on this floor and let the strange beast guarding the pagoda go to the next floor. The 10-headed Lion King defeated 7 strange beasts that came in first and reached the 8th floor. The 8th floor was an incomparably huge stone cliff beast. The 10-headed Lion King was not its opponent. When he was defeated, the stone cliff beast stepped into the 9th floor of the pagoda. Of course, the 10-headed Lion King did not know what the stone cliff beast encountered on the 9th floor, or whether the stone cliff beast was on the 9th floor. This was because the dragon vein Xiao Hua, the phoenix body Xiao Hua, and even the great desolate 5 little beasts had stepped on his failure and entered the 9th floor. The 10-headed Lion King could only be the strange beast guarding the 8th floor. Xiao Hua did not know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this from the 10-headed Lion King's stomach. He did not know much from the 10-headed Lion King's mouth. The 10-headed Lion King's journey to Chao Tian Tower was his starting point. The 10-headed Lion King's journey to Chao Tian Tower had no meaning to him. After hearing the 10-headed Lion King's words, Xiao Hua's heart moved. He asked again, "Do you know about Devouring Heaven?" Devouring Heaven? The 10-headed Lion King was stunned. It seemed to think for a moment before replying, "This lowly one does not know who Devouring Heaven is." Xiao Hua frowned. He also thought for a moment. With a smile on his face, he described Devouring Heaven's appearance. Sure enough, the 10-headed Lion King laughed and said, "Now that you have said it, I know. It is that gluttonous thing. He is actually called Devouring Heaven? He can actually eat the sky." Xiao Hua nodded. Just as he was about to speak, the 10-headed Lion King laughed again and said, "This guy is rather strange. He used to eat meat. Later on, I don't know what happened, but he suddenly became a vegetarian. That's why the Black Jade Qilin and the others bullied him quite a bit." At this point, Xiao Hua already knew that the Black Jade Donkey, golden toad, 5-colored stupid chicken, black and white stinky turtle, and little white stinky cat were actually the black jade cheelin, golden toad, 5-colored peacock, black and white tortoise, and black sky white tiger. However, the great desolate 5 little beasts bullied Devouring Heaven. Devouring Heaven could not beat them, so it called them so unbearable. All right, this old man has finished asking. This old man is going out. Xiaohua finally said the words that the 10-headed Lion King was bitterly waiting for. The 10-headed Lion King hurriedly and happily transmitted his voice. Where are you? Don't move, this little one will spit you out. Xiaohua transmitted his voice and withdrew his innate true water and other divine abilities. His figure stood still in midair. A ripple appeared in the space where Xiaohua was at. The wind and thunder above his head and Xuanyue below his feet gradually disappeared. Following layers of halos that were like molting skin brushed off, that indifferent Buddhist aura that was like clear water once again revealed itself from behind these halos. And the 9 lion heads from before had now shrunk again. A 10-headed Lion King that was similar to Xiaohua's figure stood in front of Xiaohua submissively. And behind that Lion King, another seemingly ordinary flight of stairs was laid out in midair. Xiaohua glanced at the 10-headed Lion King, pointed at the flight of stairs and said, "This old man can just go up?" "Yes, you can reach the 9th floor of the pagoda by stepping on this flight of stairs." The 10-headed Lion King hurriedly replied, but his voice was filled with envy. Xiaohua nodded. His figure had already arrived in front of the flight of stairs. But at this moment, Xiaohua turned his head to look at the 10-headed Lion King, smiled and transmitted his voice. "This old man is leaving, but what about you? Could it be that you want to be the guardian beast of the pagoda for the rest of your life?" Although the 10-headed Lion King was an ancient beast and had an unruly nature, this did not mean that he did not know the concern in Xiaohua's voice. Of course, the so-called ancient beasts also had an innate admiration for the strong. At this moment, hearing Xiaohua's question, he hurriedly transmitted his voice respectfully, "You don't have to worry. When the weapons of Chaotian Tower are taken away this time, the entire Chaotian Tower will be reopened. This little one, who is waiting in the pagoda, can also withdraw from Chaotian Tower." "Good." Xiaohua transmitted his voice and landed on the flight of stairs. The Buddhist aura on the flight of stairs rolled up, and Xiaohua's figure immediately disappeared. Chapter 4208. Roar. Behind Xiaohua, the 10 Lion Kings opened their mouths at the same time. As they roared, the Buddhist light in the entire space shook, like a candle in the wind. In just a moment, the figures of the 10 Lion Kings were hidden in the Buddhist light again. Presumably, they were waiting for another prehistoric beast to step into the 8th floor of the pagoda. Xiaohua was inside the Buddhist light, and he could vaguely feel the sullenness and anger of the 10 Lion Kings. After all, the 10 Lion Kings were subdued by him before they could fully display their magical powers. His heart was inevitably unsatisfied, but who told the 10 Lion Kings to be too calculative, wanting to swallow the newcomer into their stomachs as soon as they came up? As the Buddhist light on Xiaohua's body disappeared, a space that was exactly the same as the 8th floor of the pagoda appeared in front of Xiaohua's eyes. However, in this space, apart from a stone step, there were no prehistoric beasts. "It's a bit strange." Xiaohua's figure appeared, and he immediately frowned. At the same time, his Buddhist sense also swept over like a stream. Ouch! However, before Xiaohua's Buddhist sense could sweep out 100 feet, a very slight numbing feeling came from his feet. Xiaohua was very surprised and swept his Buddhist sense under his feet, but he saw that there was actually a very small mosquito buzzing above his feet. Seeing that it was a mosquito, Xiaohua's heart relaxed. In his vague memory, it seemed that he was bitten by many mosquitoes when he was a child. It was only a moment of relaxation, but Xiaohua's heart immediately tightened. If it was the Xiaoyu continent or the hidden immortal continent, he might be able to ignore mosquitoes, but what was this place? The mysterious prehistoric continent was comparable to the existence of the unknown upper realm. A mosquito absolutely could not be ignored. Moreover, there were no prehistoric beasts in this 9th floor of the pagoda. Maybe this mosquito was the prehistoric beast guarding the pagoda. Sure enough, on Xiao Hua's well-tempered body, a soybean-sized lump instantly appeared on his feet. Then, the lump gave birth to an unbearable itch, and it spread along Xiao Hua's feet to his legs and other parts. Xiao Hua almost naturally stretched out his hand, wanting to scratch the itch. Xiao Hua's right hand only extended a few inches before he forcefully pulled it back. His magic power surged and a spell landed on his feet along with his right hand. It would have been fine if Xiao Hua hadn't used his magic power, but under the urging of his magic power, that soybean-sized lump had actually sunk in. Then, with that lump as the center, Xiao Hua's foot began to fester. Moreover, that itchiness became even more intense. Oh my God! Xiao Hua was startled. He hurriedly opened his mouth and spat out a stream of samadhi true fire. He wanted to burn off the surface of his body. Heh! At this moment, a weak but arrogant voice sounded, "Little thing, just surrender yourself. Not to mention you, even the Skitshaze beast would not be able to escape from my palm." Xiao Hua sneered. Seeing that under the true samadhi fire, the collapsed surface of his body was starting to recover, he relaxed in his heart and transmitted his voice. "You're just a little mosquito, how dare you be so arrogant? What kind of divine ability do you have? It was just a sneak attack when this old man wasn't paying attention." Ah! That mosquito flapped its wings and disappeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. When it reappeared, it was already several hundred feet away. The mosquito also sneered, "What do you know? Don't look at me as just a mosquito. I've lived the longest on this desolate continent. Even the black jade Qilin and the others are my juniors." "Hee hee, you actually know that you're a junior and a senior?" Xiao Hua replied, "Seems like compared to those ignorant desolate beasts, you're a bit." Just as he said this, the itchiness on Xiao Hua's feet once again flared up. It even had the tendency to rush up to his knees. Xiao Hua was once again startled. He hurriedly pondered in his mind, wanting to find a way to get rid of this strange itchiness. "Hee hee." That mosquito laughed proudly, "Don't think of any way. You'd better surrender quickly and let me fly out of this pagoda. Maybe I'll let you live." Before the mosquito's voice fell, Xiao Hua opened his eyes and spat out a stream of cold flame, burning it towards the mosquito. Boom! Seeing that the several feet space around the mosquito was shrouded in flames, Xiao Hua released his Buddhist sense and swept it towards the flames. However, the situation in front of him was beyond Xiao Hua's expectations. Without waiting for his Buddhist sense to sweep over, the flame that was several feet in size suddenly converged towards a black spot. Without using any Buddhist sense, Xiao Hua's naked eye could clearly see that the frigid flame was actually sucked into the mosquito's stomach. Damn it! Seeing the mosquito's magical ability, Xiao Hua immediately thought of the strange insect he encountered before. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Then, what made Xiao Hua even more shocked was that when his Buddhist sense landed on the mosquito's body, a strange biting force was also born, tearing apart several pieces of Buddhist sense from his Buddhist sense. Even in Xiao Hua's mud pill palace, he could actually hear the sound of his Buddhist sense being chewed and swallowed by the mosquito. This mosquito is really strange. Xiao Hua hurriedly thought of a countermeasure. How did Taoist Long Mai and Taoist Phoenix Body break through here? Or perhaps when they came, this mosquito didn't appear yet? While he was thinking, he saw the festering area on his feet was increasingly expanding, and there were layers of tiny bubbles emerging from the festering area. These bubbles swallowed the light protecting his body, and even swallowed the fluctuations of magic power. It seemed that this wasn't something that could be controlled by Taoist magic. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Xiao Hua chanted the name of Buddha, and his hands formed a Buddhist seal. After pondering for a moment, a clear heart incantation slowly came out of his mouth, and the Buddhist light fell on his feet along with the Buddhist seal. He felt a burst of coolness coming from his feet, and the festering area gradually began to heal. However, in just a few breaths, the bubbles became increasingly turbulent, and even swallowed the Buddhist light. Even if Xiao Hua urged his mind power, the collapse still couldn't be stopped. Xiao Hua's mind had already spun a few times, and thought of several unusual secret techniques, But obviously, they couldn't deal with this strange mosquito attack. Seeing that the Buddhist light was ineffective, Xiaohua suddenly patted his head, raised his hand, and took out several medicinal pills from the space, crushed them with both hands, and sprinkled them on his feet. Similar to the Buddhist light, when the medicinal pills fell on his feet, they only stopped the collapse for a moment, and then the speed of the collapse accelerated again. Wang Wang. At this moment, a rumbling sound came in front of Xiaohua, and he saw that the mosquito that had just absorbed the cold flame and Buddhist sense suddenly swayed, as if Xiaohua's eyes were playing tricks on him. Dozens, hundreds, thousands of mosquitoes appeared one after another, and in a moment, they turned into a black cloud of mosquitoes, pouncing on Xiaohua. Xiaohua was shocked, and his figure hurriedly flew away, fleeing into the distance. He couldn't even deal with a poisonous mosquito bite. If he was stung by this group of mosquitoes, how would he deal with it? Rumble. At the same time that Xiaohua's figure fled, the power of thunder also fell out of thin air. However, in the lightning, although many mosquitoes exploded into nothingness, at the same time, many more mosquitoes appeared, and even more mosquitoes chased after Xiaohua. Xiaohua felt like he had overreached himself. Damn it, how did fellow Taoist dragon bloodline and fellow Taoist phoenix body defeat these disgusting mosquitoes? Xiaohua was flustered and exasperated. He was clear in his heart that since his two doppelgangers could defeat these mosquitoes, there was no reason for him to lose. However, the problem was that Xiaohua knew a lot of secret techniques, and he couldn't remember what divine ability dragon bloodline Xiaohua and phoenix body Xiaohua used. Innate primordial water? Xiaohua's mind lit up, and he pondered, this mysterious continent lacks water element heaven-earth origin qi. Presumably these mosquitoes rarely see innate primordial water, maybe they can kill it. Thinking, Xiaohua released the innate primordial water again. Swoosh! The innate primordial water protected Xiaohua's body, blocking the circle of mosquitoes 100 feet away. When Xiaohua looked down at his feet again, his entire foot began to fester, and the bubbles were spreading up his calf. But this is innate primordial water? I haven't seen water for a long time. At this time, the mosquito's voice suddenly sounded, and somewhat faintly fell into Xiaohua's Naiwen palace. However, Xiaohua didn't pay too much attention to it, because his attention was attracted by the situation outside the innate primordial water. Outside the innate primordial water, a group of mosquitoes rushed over. The innate primordial water, which could almost corrode everything and even block the 10 Lion Kings, was now food for the mosquitoes. Seeing the mosquitoes swallow the thin layer of innate primordial water, countless mosquitoes appeared out of thin air, and Xiaohua didn't dare to use the innate primordial water again. He collected the innate primordial water, and his figure escaped again. However, before he left, Xiaohua released his mind and divine sense again, wanting to collect the mosquitoes into the space. Xiaohua was disappointed again. Although the mosquitoes were very small, they had their own consciousness, and Xiaohua's mind couldn't collect them into the space. Seeing that Xiaohua's many methods were useless, the mosquito unconsciously became more arrogant, and its originally very soft voice now became louder. What other good things do you have? Take them out, I haven't eaten meat for a long time. Whoosh! Before the mosquito's voice fell, a golden light flashed in the air, and Xiaohua actually took out the soaring dragon shears. Although it was like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife, Xiaohua still had to give it a try. The result was not out of Xiaohua's expectations. Under the golden light, all the mosquitoes were split into two halves, but the strange thing was, the two halves of the mosquitoes rolled in the air, and actually absorbed the magic power of the soaring dragon shears, and turned into two halves again. Xiaohua completely understood that the mosquitoes were the same as the strange insect. They were all things that devoured magic power and qi of heaven and earth. If he didn't use magic power to make them explode, he was afraid that there was no other way. Seeing that to deal with a mosquito, he had to use spiritual fire and other things, Xiaohua was really unwilling in his heart. Dragon bloodline Xiaohua and phoenix body Xiaohua didn't have spiritual fire. Dragon bloodline Xiaohua only had the heavenly dragon technique and didn't have any magic tools. Phoenix body Xiaohua only had the demonic arts of the demon clan and also didn't have any magic tools. Chapter 4209. Ouch! Xiaohua's mind lit up when he thought of this. Without hesitation, he waved his hand and the water butterfly flew out from the space. As soon as the water butterfly flew out, a whirlwind appeared in the space. Water ripples appeared in the whirlwind and swept over the mosquitoes. What is this? The mosquitoes' loud voices instantly weakened. Hundreds of mosquitoes fell into the whirlwind and were swallowed by the water butterfly. Everything has its vanquisher. Xiaohua's gaze swept over it and he couldn't help laughing. Ever since this water-patterned butterfly had settled in his space, it had never come out, nor had it helped him. He didn't expect that this unknown little thing was actually the nemesis of mosquitoes. The mosquitoes began to collapse. Some of them even formed small groups to attack the water butterfly. However, the water butterfly had experienced the separation of yin and yang in the space and had lived in Xiaohua's space for thousands of years. How could it still be the water butterfly of the past? While waving its wings to kill the mosquitoes, it also avoided the attacks of the mosquitoes and attracted all the mosquitoes from Xiaohua's side to its side. Now that he had a way to deal with mosquitoes, Xiaohua calmed down and looked at his feet. At this time, one of his feet had already started to fester. A heart-piercing itch forced him to make up his mind to cut it off. Xiaohua's heart tightened. He would rather believe the words of the mosquito that was known as the longest surviving mosquito on the great desolate continent. Its poison was definitely not that simple. Even if he cut off his entire leg, he might not be able to expel the poison from his body. Damn it, Taoist Longmai. Xiaohua could not help but grumble again. However, this time, it was different from before. He seemed to have realized something and hurriedly waved his hand, causing a few drops of dragon-cleansing liquid to fall on his feet. Sizzle! With an ear-piercing sound, the moment the dragon-cleansing liquid fell on his festering body, tiny dragon-shaped lines immediately appeared. These dragon-shaped lines rushed into the air bubbles and instantly wiped them out. Moreover, no new air bubbles appeared where the air bubbles disappeared. This old man understands now. A bitter smile appeared on Xiaohua's face. Fellow Taoist Longmai's body is condensed from dragon-cleansing liquid. Of course, he's not afraid of mosquitoes. That fellow Taoist with the phoenix physique also had the bloodline of the demon race's supreme sage, so the mosquito didn't dare to provoke her. I'm afraid that my two clones swaggered up to the top of the pagoda from here, right? On the contrary, my main body was almost defeated by this mosquito. At this time, Xiaohua had another kind of realization in his heart. He was already at the Grand Ascension stage and he knew a lot of secret techniques. In fact, he even had a lot of spirit treasures in his space. However, he didn't have enough experience. Ordinary Grand Ascension stage cultivators would have to go through life and death trials and experience all kinds of dangers in the cultivation world. They would also have their own understanding of all kinds of beasts and secret techniques. That way, they would be able to find secret techniques and spirit medicines that were suitable for them to help them emerge victorious in some life and death battles. But the 20,000 years that Xiaohua cultivated were all spent in the heavenly prison. How could he see the outside world? Moreover, the primitive continent was completely different from the hidden immortal continent. Although Xiaohua had the water-patterned butterfly that could easily destroy enemies and the dragon-cleansing liquid that could easily dispel the pattern poison, he didn't know about it and had to try for a long time to understand. It seems that the words of Confucian cultivators about reading 10,000 books and traveling 10,000 miles are not empty words. Xiaohua sighed with emotion as he washed his feet with the precious dragon-cleansing liquid. In just a moment, his feet that he wanted to chop off had already recovered. Looking at the mosquito swarm that Xiaohua was at a loss of what to do, now that the water-patterned butterfly had wiped them out, leaving only one mosquito that was forced to flee in a sorry state by the water-patterned butterfly. A weak and anxious voice came, quickly take this thing. I'll let you pass, okay? Why should this old man take this thing? Xiaohua smiled. The 10-headed lion king of the 8th floor still wants to come to the 9th floor. If I eat you, won't it be just what it wants? 10-headed lion king? The mosquito was slightly stunned. Why did he also come to the imperial palace? Then the mosquito said disdainfully, with his strength, reaching the 8th floor is already the peak, yet he still wants to go to the 9th floor. I was wrong. I'll tell you a secret of the imperial palace. Can I trouble you to take this thing? Otherwise, even if he swallows me, you can only enter the top of the pagoda. And the primitive continent is short of an old man like me. Xiaohua remembered that the mosquito had also asked him to surrender and nodded slightly. He took the water-patterned butterfly and said, "Tell me, if this old man is satisfied, this old man will let you go." That. Seeing Xiaohua being so straightforward, the mosquito was embarrassed and transmitted, "Actually, it's not a secret. I only know that at the beginning, this place was a sea. I don't know when it started, but it actually became the imperial palace. This pagoda also seemed to be born in a day." "See?" Xiaohua asked curiously, "Could it be that what you said before was true? There used to be water in the primitive continent?" Of course. Hearing Xiaohua's interest, the mosquito was overjoyed and said as if it was showing off, "In the past, this was the sea. The water was endless, and the sea beasts in the sea were innumerable. However, I don't know when it started, but everything started to change. The water was less, and the mountains were more, and they were taller. In the past, I was invincible, but now, there are many more beasts that are stronger than me. I don't even have a place to go." Looking at the mosquito's tiny body and thinking about the endless sea that it said, Xiaohua slightly curled his lips and transmitted, "It's just the ordinary transformations of the sea and mulberry fields, it's not a secret. How about this, I want to know another secret." "Alright, say it." The mosquito replied helplessly, "If I don't know, I don't have to answer." "You definitely know." Xiaohua said very insidiously, "I want to ask, other than using more heaven and earth origin qi than you can bear to make you explode, other than your natural enemy, what other methods can kill you?" Although he couldn't see the situation on the mosquito's face, he couldn't hear the mosquito's voice and didn't see the mosquito's answer. Xiaohua could already guess the embarrassment on the mosquito's face. "This secret, you definitely know." Xiaohua asked indifferently, "Anyway, I have methods to kill you. Telling this secret to this old man isn't a big deal, right?" The mosquito seemed to have thought it through and replied, "If you swear and don't say anything else, I might consider it." Xiaohua said resolutely, "I won't tell others, but I definitely won't swear. Moreover, you have to answer this question, there's nothing to consider." The mosquito looked at Xiaohua, not knowing if he could read the insidiousness on Xiaohua's face. After hesitating for a moment, he transmitted a few words with a faintly discernible voice. It was just a few words, but Xiaohua frowned and even shook his head slightly. Obviously, the other methods to kill the mosquito were too harsh. "Forget it." Then Xiaohua nodded, "Whether what you said is correct or not, this old man will let you go." "Thank you." The mosquito gave a rare thank you, flapped his wings and disappeared. Looking at the flickering Buddhist light in the space, Xiaohua was too lazy to use his Buddhist sense to see where the mosquito was hiding. His figure flashed and landed on the steps. The steps rolled up the Buddhist light, and Xiaohua's figure disappeared from the space of the 9th floor. When Xiaohua appeared again, he was at the top of the pagoda. However, this time, it was somewhat different from what Xiaohua saw under the pagoda. The mirror that was originally horizontally above his head was now horizontally erected in front of Xiaohua. In the mirror, there was another Xiaohua, looking handsome and confident, like a jade tree facing the wind. "Damn it." Xiaohua touched his nose and looked at the mirror. "There's only one such peerless figure in the world. If there were two, it would be too much." But in the mirror, Xiaohua was also saying the same thing and doing the same actions. Alas! Xiaohua sighed, and a kind of vicissitudes of life appeared in his heart. Because if it was before, facing such a strange mirror, Xiaohua might jump again and do some strange actions to see if the figure in the mirror could do the same. Xiaohua might even punch and kick the mirror, and compete with himself in the mirror. But now, looking at the figure in front of him that was exactly the same as himself, this kind of thought flashed through his mind, and he was too lazy to do it. That Xiaohua who still had a child's heart, was getting farther and farther away from himself. I wonder if it's the vicissitudes of life? Or the devil's nature entering the body. But as long as it was a mirror, it was inevitably an illusion. The best way to break this illusion was to take out something unique in this world, so that the illusion could not be transformed, or the thing transformed by the illusion would not have any real power. There were many such things in Xiaohua's space, and if Xiaohua casually took out something, the mirror might not be able to transform successfully. Go! Sure enough, as Xiaohua took out the dream mirage butterfly in the mirror, in the hand of the same handsome Xiaohua, only the body of the dream mirage butterfly was revealed. Then, Xiaohua used his hand to point at the dream mirage butterfly, and after the hand of the Xiaohua in the mirror moved, his whole body began to jump, and even his mouth sang. Little sister, you sit at the bow. Xiaohua just used the dream mirage butterfly to make a simple illusion, and the mirror followed suit. The real Xiaohua looked at the figure of Xiaohua in the mirror, and the corner of his mouth slightly smiled. He took a deep breath, and the bronze brilliance on the surface of his body brightened. Then, the heavenly laws embodiment technique came out, and a 10,000 zhang tall transcendence golden body appeared on the top of the pagoda. And this golden body in the illusion of the dream mirage butterfly did not appear in the mirror. Chapter 42:10. Now that the golden body was formed, Xiaohua clenched his fists and punched the mirror in front of his head. Gotcha! A crack appeared on the mirror, and then the crack turned into several thunderbolts that struck Xiaohua's golden body. Boom, boom, boom. Xiaohua was not afraid of the thunderbolts from the mirror at all. He waved his fists, but in a moment, the mirror was full of cracks. Finally, Xiaohua waved his hand again, and the wishful steel staff appeared in his hand. It was as if the whole world was about to be stirred up. The shocking staff crossed the sky and fell into the center of the crack. Boom! The mirror could no longer withstand the heavy blow and broke uncontrollably under the wishful steel staff. In the broken area, the dancing shadow turned into fragments, just like a distant memory of Xiaohua. The folk song in the countryside came to an abrupt end, like a knife cutting off water. Rumble! At the same time the mirror shattered, the entire world shook, and the pagoda beneath Xiaohua shook violently as well. At the same time the mirror disappeared, another strange world appeared above Xiaohua's head. This world was very similar to the previous mirror, and there was also an inverted pagoda there. The spire of this pagoda and Xiaohua's pagoda were together, and the bottom of the pagoda was also standing on the ground. On the ground, there were also mountains, boulders, ancient trees, and yellow sand, but there were no Buddha clouds and the ancient monsters around the pagoda, and there was no figure of Xiaohua at the top of the pagoda. Xiaohua raised his head to look at the strange heaven and earth. His brows furrowed slightly at first, but it was only for a moment before joy appeared on his face. This was because he could vaguely sense the auras of Dragon Vein Xiaohua and Phoenix Body Xiaohua. Following the source of the aura, Xiaohua hurriedly swept out with his divine sense, trying to find the location of the two doppelgangers. However, when his divine sense swept through the boundary between the two pagodas, he found that there seemed to be a solid barrier between the two worlds, and Xiaohua's hammer-like divine sense could not pass through. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. His figure soared into the sky and flew towards the barrier between heaven and earth. Woo! Like a gentle breeze, Xiaohua's body easily passed through the barrier without any hindrance. However, what made Xiaohua feel very strange was that when Xiaohua's figure landed in another layer of heaven and earth, a powerful repulsive force stopped him from falling. Moreover, when Xiaohua's powerful upward momentum reached this space, it also transformed into an upward momentum. Xiaohua's physical body didn't stay in this space for even a moment, and he returned to the previous space. Oh, so these are two inverted spaces. The scenery inside is similar, and the attraction force of everything inside is also directed downwards. When the prehistoric beasts fell into the heaven and earth, the suction force was still on this side, but it was on that side. The repulsive force from before was actually the original suction force between heaven and earth. Xiaohua's figure maintained balance in midair. He raised his head to look at the heaven and earth, and even looked at the same sun sprinkling sunlight on different lands. He seemed to be deep in thought. Since this Xiao's vision isn't affected, then the sunlight isn't affected either. If this Xiao can practice light escape, I'm afraid this Xiao won't be affected anymore. Unfortunately, Xiaohua still hadn't reached the stage where he could accommodate himself in the light, and he still couldn't break away from the suction force of this heaven and earth reversal. Therefore, he only stopped for a moment before moving again, crossing the barrier between the two worlds, and landing lightly in the other world. Then he activated his magic power and turned his body upside down, allowing his body to slowly descend. This kind of action was absolutely inconceivable in the eyes of ordinary people, but in the eyes of cultivators, it was easy. When Xiaohua released his divine sense again, he found something strange. He felt that his divine sense was sweeping to the front, but it just so happened that his divine sense was sweeping to the back. He felt that his divine sense was sweeping to the left, but what he saw was the situation on the right. In short, everything was completely opposite to what Xiaohua felt. This made Xiaohua feel extremely awkward. Could it be that flying is also the same? Xiaohua was a little depressed. When he tried it, it was indeed the case. Damn. Not only is the suction force different, but all the feelings are also the opposite of the original heaven and earth. This is really awkward. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He hurriedly swept his divine sense awkwardly towards the place where he found Xiaohua of the dragon vein and Xiaohua of the phoenix body, and that figure also flew down the pagoda. When Xiaohua's figure landed on the third floor of the pagoda, he suddenly found that in the space not far from the pagoda, there were 5 balls of light of different colors flashing. These 5 colored balls of light formed another huge, incomplete halo that enveloped an area of about 1,000 miles. Within this halo, the aura of Xiaohua of the dragon vein and Xiaohua of the phoenix body would occasionally spread out. Hiss! The moment he sensed the aura of the 2 doppelgangers, Xiaohua already knew the situation of the 2 doppelgangers. He sucked in a breath of cold air, looked at the 5 balls of light, and was a little surprised. Are these the Chaos 5 little ones? They actually have such strength that even fellow Taoist Longmai was injured by them. If it wasn't for fellow Taoist Phoenix body protecting fellow Taoist Longmai, I'm afraid fellow Taoist Longmai would be in danger. However, he saw that the 5 balls of light were not static in the air, but slowly rotating in a certain trajectory, and even the trajectory of each ball of light was different. But the mystery was that no matter how the 5 balls of light rotated, they could form a huge halo. This huge halo firmly covered Xiaohua's 2 doppelgangers, either rotating from top to bottom or from left to right. Every time it rotated, there was a wisp of 5-colored brilliance flowing from one end of the halo to the other end, and at the same time, a strange fluctuation was born from that brilliance, landing on Xiaohua's 2 doppelgangers. At this time, Xiaohua of the dragon vein had already revealed his dragon body, lying weakly on the ground. His body was suffused with a golden brilliance, trying his best to resist the fluctuation. In this golden brilliance, waves of dragon chi mixed with dragon patterns emerged, as if it was breathing up and down. As for Xiaohua of the phoenix body, he released the heavenly phoenix demon body, and the huge wings of Xiaohua of the dragon vein protected his body. Above Xiaohua of the phoenix body, the light of the moon and stars like the stars, also resisting the strange fluctuation. Spirit awakening 5 essences formation? Xiaohua's eyes narrowed, and he immediately saw through the 5 balls of light inside the halo. He was not in a hurry to break the formation, but his eyes flashed with a cold light as he thought to himself. No, it doesn't seem to be. This formation is somewhat similar to the Xiantian realm. Compared to the Spirit Awakening 5 Essences formation, who knows how many times more brilliant it is. Although the Great Desolate 5 Little Ones did not possess all 5 elements, their bodies are all Great Desolate beasts. Even if they use their Great Desolate bloodline, they are still more powerful than ordinary 5-element spirit beasts. Being trapped in this array formation, even this Xiao would be helpless, much less this Xiao's 2 avatars. Especially my 2 doppelgangers, one of them is from the Dragon Clan, and the other is from the Demon Clan. They are precisely restrained by the Great Desolate 5 Little Ones, so being trapped here is unavoidable. However, since they dare to compete with me, then I want to see what kind of powerful means the great desolate five little ones have. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua sneered, and anger rose from the bottom of his heart. His hands slightly rubbed, and he was about to activate his magic power. At this time, among the 5 colored balls of light, a relatively lively dark green ball of light just happened to turn in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. This dark green ball of light let out a weng-weng rumbling sound, and then it shrank and expanded from the inside out. Following this rumbling sound, the ball of light rippled, and a great desolate beast that looked like a qilin but also not a qilin appeared from the light. Xiao Hua originally did not intend to give this strange beast any chance, but seeing the appearance of this strange beast, a trace of familiarity emerged in his heart. This strange beast was very similar to a qilin, but this strange beast's head and face were like a horse, horns like a deer, neck like a camel, tail like a donkey, and it was somewhat different from a qilin. Xiao Hua unconsciously stopped activating his magic power, and he was somewhat surprised in his heart. This great desolate beast should be a black jade qilin. However, why does it not look very similar to the qilin I encountered in the hidden immortal continent? Could it be this great desolate beast is different from the demon race in the 1,000 demon sacred realm? But why does it look somewhat familiar to me? And you can't bear to attack me? The black jade qilin's figure appeared, and a blazing sense also unbridled swept over Xiao Hua. Then, an even more arrogant voice sounded, "What are you? How come I have never seen you before?" Xiao Hua pinched his chin, coldly looked at the black jade qilin's figure, and transmitted his voice, "I am not a thing, I am Taoist Xiao. What are you a thing?" Taoist Xiao? What is Taoist Xiao? The black jade qilin looked at Xiao Hua with some doubt, and immediately said impatiently, "I don't care what kind of great desolate beast you are. I came to this Chao Tian Tower first. If you know what's good for you, go look around yourself, maybe you can find some weapons and strange objects. Don't disturb me, the great desolate 5 elders, and I will spare your life." Seeing the black jade qilin's face like a ruffian in the marketplace, Xiao Hua's previous familiar feeling of loving the house and its crow instantly turned into disgust. "Shut up!" Xiao Hua roared angrily. He actually forgot to send a sound transmission. He looked very angry. Then, he came back to his senses and sent a sound transmission. "You 5 shameless things. You actually ganged up on 2 of my Dao friends. Today, I'm here to cause trouble for you." "Oh?" The black jade qilin stared blankly at first, then the corner of his mouth revealed a sinister smile. He raised his head and laughed loudly for a moment, then transmitted his voice loudly, "Ha, what do you mean by ganging up on one? The 5 of us are the great desolate 5 elders. Against 1, we will attack together. Against 10, even against 100, we will attack together. If you are together with these 2 ugly things, then that's good. I can cut the weeds and eliminate the roots, to prevent future troubles." Chapter 42:11. As he spoke, the dark green ball of light where the ink jade qilin was located suddenly released a bolt of lightning. The lightning fell into the ring of light and penetrated the other 4 balls of light. Weng-weng. The distance between the 5 balls of light suddenly pulled apart. At the same time, the ring of light stretched like a rainbow bridge and covered Xiao Hua, as if it wanted to trap him inside. How could Xiao Hua let the ink jade qilin succeed? His figure flashed as he teleported towards the sky. However, Xiao Hua was so furious that he had forgotten about the strangeness of this place. When his figure reappeared, he was not standing in the sky, but had instead landed on the ground in the distance. Even so, the ring of light brushed through the air and swept past the place where Xiao Hua was standing before. It did not trap Xiao Hua. Ah! Xiao Hua was so angry that he laughed. Looking at the 5 balls of light attacking him, he transmitted his voice, as expected of the ink jade stupid donkey. "You said it very well. Facing 100 of them together, this old man will let you and the other Chaos 5 little ones face 100 of them. You actually dare to call me ink jade stupid donkey?" The ink jade qilin seemed to be very afraid of this title. Hearing Xiao Hua's transmission, it was really furious. The ball of light seemed to boil, and the ink jade Qilin's image was instantly absorbed into the ball of light. A huge Qilin figure appeared in the ball of light. This old man will not only call you a stupid donkey. Xiaohua transmitted his voice coldly. This old man will also take your stupid donkey life. As he spoke, Xiaohua raised his hand and patted the top of his head. Puff! Lightning surged out from the top of his head, covering thousands of miles around him. Then, hundreds of rainbows flew out from the lightning and landed around the arrays set up by the 5 little beasts of the primitive wasteland. When the rainbows disappeared, the 108th rank scattered nascent souls each sat cross-legged in the air and surrounded the chaos 5 little ones. Lightning lingered around each scattered nascent soul, forming a thunder armor. This old man will let you know what it means to bully the few with numbers. Xiaohua transmitted his voice fiercely. Then, Xiaohua raised his hand and a ray of sword light appeared on his arm. Clang! The sound of the sword was like a dragon. As Xiaohua's arm fell, the ray of sword light struck the ring of light formed by the 5 little beasts, causing sparks to fly. Xiaohua's voice was like a god's in the air, kill! Looking at the 100 or so rank 8 scattered nascent souls, each of them was 8 feet tall, a bit taller than ordinary cultivators. Not only were they wearing thunder armor, but they were also holding different spirit tools according to their attributes. These spirit tools were all magic tools that had been separated into yin and yang in Xiaohua's space. Now that they had been refined by these scattered nascent souls, they all had the power of a heavenly spirit treasure. 100 nascent soul cultivators surrounded the 5 small groups of the primordial world. It was the heavenly star formation of Chengdu. After hearing Xiaohua's order, they said at the same time, yes. His voice was like a thunderclap, and the hundreds of spirit artifacts were swung out at the same time, as if they were about to shatter the heavens and earth. In this inverted space, a hurricane of 10,000 feet was set off in an instant. The hurricane blew past the Buddhist pagoda, giving rise to the sound of ghosts wailing and wolves howling. Even the 10,000 Buddhas were wailing, and a myriad of strange splendors shrouded the space of 10,000 miles. Xiaohua didn't know how strong the 5 small groups of the primordial world were, but seeing the 5 strange beasts joining forces to surround dragon bloodline Xiaohua and phoenix body Xiaohua, and even needing to rely on a Xiantian formation to injure dragon bloodline Xiaohua, Xiaohua also didn't feel that the 5 small groups could have any great divine ability. Therefore, after Xiaohua commanded the 100 or so rank 8 scattered nascent souls, a sneer hung at the corner of his mouth. With his hands behind his back, he indifferently watched. His face revealed an expression of having a card up his sleeve. Xiaohua had always been merciful. He absolutely wouldn't force people, or even demonic beasts, into a dead end. However, he was indeed angry today. Looking at dragon bloodline Xiaohua's dragon body crawling on the ground, his heart slightly ached. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to use his thunderous methods to kill these 5 ruffians who usually bullied the strange beasts of the primordial world. Seeing such a formation, the ink jade Qilin turned pale with fright. He almost stuttered as he transmitted his voice. You all actually have weapons? This isn't fair. You also know it's not fair? The corner of Xiaohua's mouth rose into a sneer. Why didn't you say it was fair when you bullied my 2 fellow Taoists and the Heaven Devourer and other strange beasts of the primordial world? The ink jade Qilin still wanted to defend himself, but that rain-like spirit treasure had already fallen. It seemed like every spirit treasure had the power to kill him. Just the aura of so many spirit treasures alone was enough to suffocate him. Do you think I, your father, am afraid of you? The ink jade Qilin was also a ruthless character. At this time, after hearing Xiaohua's words, he simply didn't beg for mercy. With a roar, his figure submerged into the ball of light. That ball of light emitted an even more resplendent brilliance. Although the other primordial world 4 small ones didn't show up, they all sensed that something was wrong. Each of them activated their own ball of light, and that halo flew out like a waterfall. Whether it was the fluctuation or the multicolored light, they all met the wave of spirit treasures that had already formed layers. Boom boom. Within 1,000 miles, The air waves that had previously annihilated heaven and earth, all the brilliance was annihilated in this air wave. All the fluctuations also disappeared in this air wave. How could the formation of the primordial world, 5 small ones, withstand the attack of dozens of spirit treasures? However, with one touch, the entire formation immediately collapsed. In the roar, 5 strange beasts of the primordial world that were close to 1,000 feet in size revealed themselves from the ball of light. Dark green flames flickered around the black jade Chilin's body. These flames could no longer protect its body. Parts of the scales that were torn apart by the flames were torn off by the spirit weapon. Streams of beast blood that were filled with fiery threads flowed out from these broken scales. In particular, the pair of horns that were previously somewhat arrogant had now been broken in half. Inexplicable patterns flickered on them, making it look extremely miserable. After the ink jade Chilin was a toad that was entirely golden. At this moment, the toad's entire body trembled violently. The bump on its chin that was thousands of feet in size expanded and shrank as it trembled. Moreover, it emitted a layer of blood. The toad's body was covered in patterns that resembled copper coins. At this moment, most of these patterns were broken. Although there were no traces of blood seeping out, one could tell from the golden toad's blood-red eyes and broken tentacles that it was more severely injured than the ink jade Chilin. To the left of the golden toad was a 5-colored phoenix. At this moment, the phoenix was extremely miserable, even worse than the ugly chicken. Not to mention that most of its feathers had been scattered by the scattered nascent soul. Even the tail that it was so proud of and had an extremely powerful divine ability was now dim. Although the 5-colored phoenix raised one of its claws slightly as if it was trying to balance its body, the blood dripping from its claws showed that it was severely injured. Beside the 5-colored phoenix was a white tiger with a pair of wings on its back. At this moment, the white tiger's wings were already broken and drooped on the tiger's back. Its white fur that should have been suffused with a holy luster was not only glaring scarlet, but also mottled with scars. Hundreds of scars that were dozens of feet long flowed with a faint brilliance, as if they were trying their best to repair these scars. The 4 little ones of desolation had another huge tortoise shell. This tortoise shell was divided into 2 colors, one white and one black. The tortoise shell emitted a dim brilliance that formed a tiny vortex in midair. Within the vortex, a timid origin sense swept through the surroundings like a snake's tongue. Although Xiaohua could not see anything else, he understood that this should be the black and white-black tortoise of the 5 little ones of desolation. Although the brilliance on the black and white-black tortoise's tortoise shell was dim, it did not have any obvious scars. It was obvious that its injuries were the lightest. Xiaohua coldly snorted and did not say anything else. In midair, the second wave of spirit tools attacked like a wave. Apart from the black and white-black tortoise's tortoise shell, the other 4 little ones of desolation revealed despair in their eyes. Quick, hide under me. At the crucial moment, the black and white-black tortoise suddenly transmitted its voice. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, the black jade Chilin cautiously shouted, "No. If we hide under you, these weapons will all hit your body. Wouldn't you be beaten to death? Damn it." The black and white-black tortoise were furious and transmitted its voice, "Even if I don't block it for you, I won't be able to escape this time. Rather than that, why don't you guys hurry up and see if there's a chance to escape?" "Not going." The black sky white tiger roared and also refused. Looking at the spirit tools that filled the sky with murderous intent and another spirit tool that was accumulating power behind the spirit tools, the black and white-black tortoise no longer hesitated and stretched its head out of the tortoise shell. Its 4 legs that were thicker than a mountain peak moved, and an earthy yellow cloud was born, carrying it into the sky to meet the dozens of spirit tools. Oh! Xiaohua was slightly stunned. Clearly, he did not expect the black and white-black tortoise to have this move. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! The black jade Chilin and the others all shouted. Clouds appeared around their bodies and rushed into the sky, wanting to block the black and white-black tortoise's head. Sigh! At this moment, Dragon Vein Xiaohua's voice sounded in Xiaohua's ear. Dragon Vein Xiaohua's breath was somewhat weak, but his tone was still firm. Forget it, fellow Taoist, just teach them a lesson. There's no need to kill them all. But Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the ground. At this moment, Phoenix Body Xiaohua had already withdrawn his body and returned to his normal size. Dragon Vein Xiaohua also withdrew his dragon body, but he did not get up from the ground. Although these 5 little things are a bit bullying, they are still snatching things. I joined hands with fellow Taoist Phoenix Body to snatch that item, and the 5 of them joined hands to snatch it back. Their actions can't be considered excessive. Dragon Vein Xiaohua explained. In addition, after they surrounded us, it's not like they didn't have the opportunity to be heavy-handed. However, they still had some kindness and threatened us many times but did not attack. Now that we have an eye for an eye, it should be doable. When Xiaohua heard this, he looked at Dragon Vein Xiaohua with a smile that was not a smile and asked, "Fellow Taoist, is this your original intention? Or is it a reason that you made up?" This Dragon Vein Xiaohua hesitated for a moment before replying, "Actually, it's not entirely like that. I only saw the 5 of them supporting each other and very naturally thought of fellow Taoist Phoenix Body saving I earlier, so I couldn't bear it." Chapter 42:12. Great! Xiaohua was overjoyed and almost clapped his hands. His 5 doppelgangers originally didn't have any human emotions, and Xiaohua didn't know how this human emotion was born. Now that he saw the dragon vein, Xiaohua, like the other doppelgangers, gradually gaining more human emotions, he was happier than anything else. His previous anger also gradually dissipated. He nodded and replied, "Since fellow Taoist says so, then we'll do as fellow Taoist says." However, these 5 youngsters bullied fellow Taoist. They can't be forgiven. We have to let them suffer a little. Yes, as long as we don't take their lives. The dragon vein Xiaohua slightly nodded and handed it over to Xiaohua to deal with. Xiaohua's change of mind, but the 5 youngsters didn't know. Seeing the skyrocketing light falling down, the 5 youngsters' eyes were filled with determination, and they respectively used their divine abilities to meet it. Just as the 5 youngsters were about to turn into ashes, all the light suddenly stopped in midair, and the air wave that suffocated the 5 youngsters hung above their heads like a huge rock. While the 5 youngsters were stunned, they heard Xiaohua's voice transmission, "You all, do you want to live?" "Yes." The 5-colored phoenix was the first to answer. Her tone was filled with ecstasy. You deserve to die the most." Xiaohua coldly snorted and berated, "You're the 5-colored phoenix, seeing that your opponent also has the phoenix bloodline? How can you be so ruthless?" The 5-colored phoenix was somewhat wronged and argued, "We just came to snatch the weapons, not to take their lives. They gave the things to us, isn't that enough?" Xiaohua knew that these beasts might not have any kinship in their eyes, so after berating a few words, he looked at the others. The golden toad, black and white tortoise, and black sky white tiger all admitted defeat and begged for mercy. On the contrary, the black jade qilin that had always been arrogant looked at Xiaohua and gritted its teeth. "Don't make fun of me. If you have a kind heart, you can let them go. This trip to the Imperial Palace was invited by me. If you want to kill them, just come find me." "Damn it," Xiaohua sneered, "you're not convinced." "Of course I'm not convinced. All of you have weapons in your hands. If you don't, I won't be afraid even if there are 10 of you, no, 5 of you." When Xiaohua heard this, he simply did not say much either. He waved his hand and instructed the scattered nascent soul to put away the spirit artifact. He casually pointed at the 5 scattered nascent souls and said, "You guys go and teach this guy a lesson." "Yes." The 5 scattered nascent souls agreed. Thunderbolts erupted from their hands, and the thunderbolts transformed into sharp weapons that attacked the black jade qilin. The black jade qilin had already spoken ruthlessly. At this moment, it was hard to retract the blade of shame. It swayed its broken horns and charged forward. Rumble. In just 5 minutes, the black jade qilin was ravaged black and blue by the 5/8 tribulation's scattered nascent souls. Although its 4 hooves were still stepping on flames, it was almost unable to stand steadily in midair. Xiaohua faintly asked, "Are you convinced?" The black jade Qilin gritted its teeth and said, I'm not convinced. If you have the ability, come and fight me yourself. Ha! Xiao Hua laughed heartily. He waved his hand to signal the 5 scattered nascent soul cultivators to withdraw and said, if you want this old man to make a move, that's fine too. However, if you lose, you'll have to be my mount. The black jade Qilin said disdainfully, you have the nerve. I'm already injured like this, so what if you win? Don't worry, Xiao Hua said with his hands behind his back. I don't need to make a move at all, nor do I need to use magic. I can naturally subdue you. I don't believe you. The black jade Qilin said angrily, you can't use weapons either. Of course. Xiao Hua smiled like an old fox and answered very decisively, if I use weapons, I'll be your mount. But the black jade Qilin answered almost without thinking. Stupid donkey. The black sky white tiger hurriedly shouted, how can you agree to him like this? What about me? The black jade Qilin had a brainless face and said angrily, I just agreed like this, what about it? Xiao Hua frowned. His gaze swept past the black jade Qilin, and then looked at the Chaos 4 little ones, revealing a thoughtful expression. Come. The black jade Qilin shook its head and said, I'd like to see how you're going to do it. Woo. Without waiting for the black jade Qilin to finish speaking, Xiao Hua's divine sense hit the black jade Qilin's head like a hammer. Boom! With a loud sound, the heavily injured black jade Qilin was suddenly knocked down from the sky by Xiao Hua and fainted on the ground. Damn it! The black sky white tiger was furious. It flapped its wings a few times, but it was in so much pain that it couldn't move. Multicolored light appeared under its feet again, and it wanted to pounce on Xiao Hua. Don't you know the black jade Qilin's painstaking efforts? Xiao Hua glanced at the fainted black jade Qilin on the ground and transmitted his voice unhurriedly. If you make a move, won't your lives be left here? Then wouldn't the black jade Qilin's plan to use its freedom to exchange for your lives fail? What? The Chaos 4 little ones were naturally not truly brainless. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, how could they not know the black jade Qilin's painstaking efforts? The 5-colored phoenix said somewhat incredulously, when did this stupid donkey have such a scheming mind? Enough. Xiao Hua waved his hand and replied somewhat impatiently, you 5 little things work together to trap my fellow Taoist and injure him. This old man originally wanted to take your lives. Since the black jade Qilin has the heart to save you, and this old man just happens to be lacking a mount, I'll reluctantly take him in and let you all live. If we're going to die, we'll die together. The black sky white tiger was unwilling and shouted stiffly. Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and said, this old man also didn't intend to let the black jade Qilin die. You all just heard that he lost to this old man, so he wants to be this old man's mount. You won't let him become a chaos beast that doesn't keep its word, right? The black sky white tiger turned its head to look at the black and white tortoises and didn't know how to answer. After all, this was the black jade Qilin's own choice. Can we wait for the black jade Qilin to wake up before leaving? The golden toad probed. Xiao Hua nodded. Of course you can, but you all have to pay a small price. Hearing this, the golden toad was overjoyed and hurriedly replied, what do you want? A copper coin on your body. Xiao Hua's gaze fell on the golden toad and replied with a smile. The golden toad didn't understand what Xiao Hua was saying, but it still nodded. Xiao Hua waved his hand and the copper coin fragment that he previously obtained in the ruins flew out and landed on the golden toad's back. Then, Xiao Hua waved his hand and a copper coin-like vein flew out from the golden toad's back along with its flesh and blood, fusing with the copper coin. The golden toad let out a blood-curdling scream and its expression became a lot more dispirited. Xiao Hua didn't pay attention to the golden toad. Several hand seals struck the copper coin, but the copper coin was suffused with a strange brilliance and disappeared. Xiao Hua took the copper coin, then waved his hand and took out 4 rejuvenation pills and gave them to the golden toad, saying, okay, you've paid the price. You all can wait here for the black jade Qilin to wake up. This old man won't take advantage of you too much. These pills are some compensation. The golden toad didn't know what rejuvenation pills were, But when the rejuvenation pills landed in front of it, the golden toad, who was good at identifying treasures, immediately knew that these were good things. It opened its mouth and very nimbly put one of the pills into its mouth with its tongue. Then, a wonderful scene appeared. The golden toad's body was suffused with a golden color, and all the copper coins on the surface of its body were spinning. Different fluctuations came from different copper coins, and at the spot that Xiaohua just took away, a new copper coin vein appeared again. The profound sky white tiger, the black tortoise, and the five-colored phoenix were all ancient beasts like the golden toad. How could they not know what was happening to the golden toad? All of them looked at it with envy in their eyes. After half a cup of tea's time, the golden light around the golden toad's body slowly dissipated. The golden toad's gaze fell on Xiaohua with a rather complicated expression. However, after a moment, the golden toad opened its mouth and blew on the remaining 3 rejuvenation pills. The 3 pills fell in front of the other 3 strange beasts. The profound sky white tiger and the other 2 beasts were wild with joy. They all opened their mouths to consume the pills, and each of them showed the advancement of their divine abilities. Can you give me another one? The golden toad saw the strange fluctuations around the 3 beasts and begged Xiaohua again, I am willing to give you another piece of flesh. Why do you want another one? Xiaohua asked knowingly. For the ink jade qilin. The golden toad did not dare to hide and answered honestly. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, No need. It is my mount, so I will naturally give it to him. And I will also give him other treasures. And I understand. The golden toad nodded and landed beside the ink jade qilin, quietly waiting for him to wake up. Xiaohua looked at the scattered souls in the air and nodded with satisfaction. He kept these scattered souls in his dantian, and then landed on the other side of the ground where the phoenix body Xiaohua was still guarding the dragon vein Xiaohua. How are your injuries? Xiaohua looked at the 2 clones, and was extremely satisfied in his heart. He asked with concern. I'm fine. The phoenix body Xiaohua said with a smile, These injuries are nothing, I will recover after resting for a few years. Good, what about you? Xiaohua looked at the dragon vein Xiaohua. I am afraid you are not that simple, right? Hee. The dragon vein Xiaohua smiled bitterly, looked at the injuries on his body, and then looked at the ground and answered, I's injuries are not light, but with the dragon cleansing liquid, I will be able to recover within 10 years. It is a pity that I's dragon qi fell into the ground for no reason and can no longer be retrieved. Xiaohua's heart moved, and he said with a smile, If the dragon qi fell into the ground, it should be able to form the dragon vein in the future. This dragon vein will definitely be able to bring blessings to a place. It is also your merit. I hope so. The dragon vein Xiaohua did not understand karma, and only answered casually. He then looked at the ink jade qilin in the distance and lowered his voice and said, Fellow Taoist, do you know what I and Phoenix Body Taoist obtained this time? Chapter 42:13. Oh, what is it? Xiaohua asked curiously, Could it be some heavenly treasure? Fellow Taoist, guess? Dragon vein Xiaohua said mysteriously. Xiaohua thought for a moment and didn't get anything, so he shook his head and said, I can't guess. However, there are a lot of heavenly treasures in this great wasteland continent. Something worthy of fellow Taoist's hand should be some kind of spirit weapon, right? Hee. Dragon vein Xiaohua smiled and said, If it's a spirit weapon, I'm afraid it won't be worth the great wasteland 5 little ones fighting with I here. Those powerful characters wouldn't have left in advance. Xiaohua understood that the powerful characters mentioned by Dragon Vein Xiaohua were the powerful auras he sensed at that time. Those auras were much more powerful than the Great Wasteland 5 little ones. However, in this Great Wasteland continent, there were many strange things. Xiaohua only knew that the Great Wasteland beasts liked powerful magic weapons. As for the other things they didn't care about, how could Xiaohua know? He could only shake his head again. Actually, Dragon Vein Xiaohua said something that almost made Xiaohua fall from the sky. I also don't know what it is. I also don't know. Phoenix Body Xiaohua said with a smile, but based on intuition, this thing must be of great use to fellow Taoist. Thank you, fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua's heart warmed as he cupped his hands and said, "You're welcome." Dragon Vein Xiao Hua patted his dragon horn. The dragon pattern on the dragon horn bloomed, and a strand of strange purple gas floated out. When this purple gas fell into the air, it immediately reflected a purple light in the surroundings. Within the light, countless jade talismans flashed, and within these jade talismans, there seemed to be endless mysteries surging. Whether Xiao Hua looked at the purple gas with his naked eyes or his divine sense swept through the purple gas, it was as if he was facing a mass of profound meaning. Countless inexplicable cryptic thoughts gushed out from his mind. What is this thing? Xiao Hua was shocked. Why is this cryptic thing similar to heavenly Dao Xiao Hua's comprehension? Who knows what this is? Dragon Vein Xiao Hua said with a smile, I only feel that this thing is similar to the things that fellow Taoists occasionally pass to us. Other great wasteland beasts looked at it and turned around. Only the great wasteland 5 little ones didn't give up and insisted on pestering us to take it back. Xiao Hua faintly nodded. His mind wrapped around the purple gas and was about to store it in his space. However, the strange thing was that the purple gas was like a world of its own in his mind. It was unbelievably heavy, and his mind couldn't absorb it at all. Xiao Hua thoughtfully looked at Dragon Vein Xiao Hua. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua was also somewhat shocked. Xiao Hua frowned and thought for a moment before releasing his invisible nascent soul. Xiao Hua's formless nascent soul faced the strand of purple gas, and an indescribable joy appeared in its eyes. Its entire body even turned into the shape of a starry sky within the purple light. There was almost no need for Xiao Hua to do anything. That strand of purple qi naturally fell into the center of the starry sky. It was precisely the dantian of the nascent soul. Just as the purple qi entered, Xiao Hua's formless nascent soul uncontrollably expanded. His spirit body transformed into an endless starry sky, filling up the entire space in an instant. Boom! As if the world was splitting apart, whether it was the inverted space or the normal space, everything was shattered by this explosion. An irresistible force emerged from the shattered space and pushed out Xiao Hua, Dragon Vein Xiao Hua, Phoenix Body Xiao Hua, the awakened Ink Jade Qilin, and the rest of the 5 beasts of the wilderness. Even to the extent that within a range of 10,000 li, there were 10 lion kings, mosquitoes, and other beasts of the wilderness squeezing out of the cracks in space and nervously flying to various parts of the wilderness. On the ground, many monsters also rushed out in groups and flew in all directions. 2 fellow Taoists, go back and rest. Xiao Hua looked at the formless nascent soul that had transformed into a starry sky that was growing bigger and bigger. Not only did it cover an area of 1,000 li, but it also had the intention of merging into the starry sky. His face was also somewhat nervous as he instructed. Okay. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua was naturally even more nervous. He didn't know whether it was a misfortune or fortune for him to obtain this purple qi. He only nodded and agreed, then followed Phoenix Body Xiao Hua into Xiao Hua's body to cultivate. The 2 clones had just entered Xiao Hua's body when another obscure comprehension from the starry sky fell into Xiao Hua's mind. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. Just as he was about to sit cross-legged and comprehend, the distant Ink Jade Qilin flew over again. I sent them away. The Ink Jade Qilin was already somewhat obedient. He held a long crystal in his hand and said, this was left behind in the imperial court? Xiao Hua didn't have time to dawdle with him. He raised his hand and gave him a rejuvenation pill, then waved his big sleeve to cover him and said, don't resist. This old man has some urgent matters to deal with right now. Everything can be discussed later. Then, seeing that he came over to promise, but Xiao Hua was still so cold, the Ink Jade Qilin was rather disappointed. It was as if his warm face was stuck to someone's cold butt. He only nodded slightly and allowed Xiao Hua to take him into the space. The Ink Jade Qilin looked at the unfamiliar scenery around him and didn't say anything. He swallowed the rejuvenation pill in one gulp, and dark green flames surged out from his body. Taking the Ink Jade Qilin as a mount was merely a thought in Xiao Hua's mind. He himself wasn't too sure why he had such thoughts at that time. Of course, this was also an extremely appropriate reason to let go of the desolate land's 5 youngsters. Therefore, Xiaohua didn't take it too seriously at this time. If it weren't for the fact that the desolate land's 5 youngsters would be harmful to the Fortune Gate's disciples, Xiaohua would have waved his hand and let the ink jade qilin go. He put away the ink jade qilin and sat cross-legged. His eyes were focused on his nose, and his nose was focused on his heart. Those obscure comprehensions were like a meteor shower, crashing into Xiaohua's mind. As time passed, these comprehensions were like a tsunami, crazily crashing into Xiaohua's mind. It was as if Xiaohua had integrated himself into the desolate land. At this time, the heavenly Tao had opened up all its mysteries to him, and Xiaohua was as weak as an ant. In front of these mysteries, he was truly insignificant and helpless. Xiaohua's face was pale, and his heart was trembling with fear. How could he not know that he had encountered an extremely great danger? The origin of this purple qi was definitely not something he could come into contact with his current cultivation. What was more, he was a newborn calf that was fearless enough to use his nascent soul to absorb this purple qi. What was a nascent soul? It was a spiritual body between heaven and earth. It was a bridge between a cultivator and heaven and earth. If his physical body absorbed the purple qi, he could rely on the laws of heaven and earth to restrict the purple qi's mysteries. However, when the purple qi entered his nascent soul's spiritual body, especially on the desolate land, the mysteries contained within the purple qi couldn't be restrained by any laws. Of course, it would surge out. Of course, if it was an ordinary Grand Ascension stage cultivator's nascent soul, it wouldn't be able to contain this kind of purple qi. When it came into contact with the purple qi, it would immediately explode. Xiaohua's nascent soul was rather special. Its core was the nebula. When the purple qi entered, it could be said to be integrated into the nascent soul's spiritual body, or it could be said to be integrated into the nebula. Therefore, Xiaohua's nascent soul was able to escape this calamity. However, even so, Xiaohua's nascent soul couldn't contain the laws of heaven and earth contained in the purple qi. His body expanded uncontrollably. As his nascent soul expanded, the mysteries in the purple qi naturally had to impact Xiaohua's body through the spiritual body. This kind of impact that Grand Ascension stage golden immortals and even gods dreamed of, and now that it was placed on Xiaohua's body, it became a torrent that was enough to strangle him. Fortunately, Xiaohua had previously coincidentally started to comprehend the Heavenly Tao. Heavenly Tao Xiaohua had also stepped into the Grand Ascension stage. Xiaohua himself had benefited a lot from Heavenly Tao Xiaohua's comprehension. This beginning impact was similar to the comprehension that Heavenly Tao Xiaohua had passed on to him. Xiaohua was already on guard. Seeing the mysteries crazily surging towards him, his mind had already fallen into the space while he was comprehending. Now, Shenhua continent was full of vitality, and all kinds of things in the world were revealed. Xiaohua didn't dare to cause a change in Shenhua continent, and his figure directly fell into the Heavenly Tao starry sky. Unlike before, when Jade Archive Xiaohua stepped into the void with tide-like fluctuations, a seemingly vast and boundless will was born in his mind. Jade Archive Xiaohua frowned, then nodded. His figure flashed, and his mind returned to his physical body. However, at this time, his mind was filled with bright starlight, and a majestic power of the Heavenly Tao protected his mind tightly. Heavenly Tao Xiaohua, who had never left the space, actually stepped into the chaotic continent for the first time. As soon as Heavenly Tao Xiaohua appeared, Xiaohua's physical body immediately disappeared from midair. When he reappeared, he was already high up in the sky. However, in the entire sky, the starry sky formed by the formless nascent soul had already stopped expanding and rising rapidly. Now, it was slowly expanding and slowly merging into the starry sky. Inexplicable fluctuations between heaven and earth appeared chaotically, and chaotically fell into the spirit body. As the spirit body absorbed these fluctuations, the mysteries fell into Xiaohua's physical body. Xiaohua's body gradually turned into a star. As his nascent soul rose, the star also grew bigger and bigger. An indescribable aura was emitted from the star and spread towards the starry sky, towards the great desolate continent. At this time, time seemed to have no meaning. In front of the mysteries of the heavenly Tao, everything was nothingness. Xiaohua seemed to have stepped onto the path to the heavens. As long as he fell into the starry sky, he would be able to obtain the purple gas, and all of his cultivation would come to an end. However, at this time in the starry sky, a star that was 1,000,000 times brighter than Xiaohua's star appeared in an extremely strange manner. As soon as this star appeared, it immediately caused a change. All of the fluctuations came to an abrupt stop, and all of the mysteries stopped attacking. This was because the brilliance of the star condensed into a ball of light in the starry sky. This ball of light didn't have a specific shape. It looked like a cauldron, like a winding dragon city wall, like a majestic academy, and in the end, like a scroll that covered the heavens and earth. Under the brilliance of the star, endless clouds appeared. These clouds were 9 colors, and they supported the scroll. Strands of auspicious aura rushed out from the clouds and fell into the formless nascent soul's body. Chapter 42:14. This auspicious chi was so familiar, carrying the gentleness of human nature. The nascent soul spirit body that was about to lose consciousness instantly stopped expanding. At the same time, the star below the nascent soul spirit body also withdrew its auspicious light, revealing Xiaohua's physical body. The physical body opened its eyes, its emotionless gaze swept over the star and scroll above its head, then it spat out 2 words very cryptically, "What a pity!" Then, Xiaohua's physical body closed its eyes again, and the aura that looked down on all living things disappeared along with the closing of its eyes. In just a short moment, Xiaohua's physical body opened its eyes again, its silver-white eyes flashing with starlight. After the starlight, 2 balls of flames burned fiercely, and within the flames, human emotions appeared again. Phew! Xiaohua's mind returned to its original position, and he first let out a long breath, then shouted, "Lucky!" When the word lucky came out, Xiaohua's heart moved. It seemed that many years ago he already had this kind of experience. If he had any worries, he would have already reached the end of his cultivation. However, Xiaohua didn't have time to think about it. His gaze fell on the star, and his eyebrows wrinkled. He muttered to himself, "Huh? This seems to be the literati star? Would it appear here?" The literati star stopped in the starry sky, covering the brilliance of all the stars. Xiaohua was puzzled, and he lowered his head to look below him. Thousands of auspicious signs were born in the sky, and it was very colorful. Strange, could it be that fellow Confucian cultivator had some kind of breakthrough? Xiaohua couldn't contact Confucian cultivator Xiaohua at this time, so he could only guess like this. Then, Xiaohua closed his eyes for a moment, and his face revealed an indescribable loneliness. He sighed again, "Heaven glimpse. This purple chi actually contains the truth of this world, and even heavenly Tao Xiaohua has to come out of the space to comprehend it. Just by this moment of comprehension, just by these 10 years of comprehension, I stepped into the unimaginable realm of heaven glimpse. Damn it, if I can comprehend the profound meaning of this purple chi, wouldn't I be able to reflect the heavens, or even merge the heavens?" Heaven glimpse, is to comprehend the heavenly Tao. And heaven glimpse, this is to peer into the heavenly Tao. I, Xiaohua, have the qualifications to peer into the heavenly Tao as a cultivator. It's really hard to imagine. Then in the future, heaven reflection, heaven fusion. Just how mysterious would that be? However, when that time comes, will this Xiao still be able to remain so calm and sigh with emotion? Feeling his heart becoming harder and harder, Xiaohua sighed slightly. He raised his head to look at the invisible nascent soul and muttered to himself, "It's only been a dozen years, but this Xiao's 8th tribulation nascent soul has taken a huge step forward. It's comparable to ordinary thousands of years of bitter cultivation." The Tao sect realm of this physical body had actually reached the peak of the late stage of the Mahayana realm. It was close to transcending the tribulation. If this literati star did not appear, this Xiao would have directly flown to the celestial world, right? Transcending the tribulation? How was this Xiao's tribulation? Although this Xiao's physical body is close to transcending tribulation, which is the so-called end of the late Mahayana realm, the beginning of the tribulation. In other words, it was the end of the tribulation transcendent stage and the beginning of the Mahayana stage. Damn it, even my human race's Tao sex cultivation method has so many entanglements. Even this Xiao is dizzy, let alone this Xiao's scarlet nascent soul technique. Now, it should be the 9th tribulation. This tribulation is also the last tribulation in the cultivation world. Although only 1 in 10,000 can successfully transcend the tribulation, if one successfully transcends it, then it will be a real scarlet nascent soul. The nascent soul body will grow flesh and set foot in the celestial world. The celestial world, what is it like? Xiaohua's heart was filled with mixed feelings. The invisible nascent soul under the literati star slowly withdrew its incomparably huge starry sky spirit body. After a dozen days, it returned to the size of 9 feet and fell into Xiaohua's lower dantian. Now, the invisible nascent soul's body was covered in light purple stripes. These stripes were somewhat faint, but there was a purple glow inside, illuminating the entire lower dantian. Under this purple glow, the other 100 or so nascent souls in the lower dantian were surrounded by tens of thousands of whirlpools. All of the nascent souls sat cross-legged, surrounding the invisible nascent soul in the middle, absorbing the faint mysteries of this glow with all their strength. Although these nascent souls did not dare to rashly merge with the purple aura, this faint glow was an opportunity that absolutely could not be encountered in the cultivation world. These nascent souls cultivated with this as the foundation. If they were able to set foot in the celestial world in the future, they would not be comparable to ordinary celestials. Xiaohua withdrew the invisible nascent soul. After waiting for half a day, he saw that the literati star was still nailed in midair. In the entire starry sky, even the sun star was not as bright as it. Under the sky, endless auspicious signs came one after another, showing no signs of stopping. Xiaohua's heart suddenly had some realization. He urged his body to land on the auspicious signs. When the seemingly solid restriction touched Xiaohua, it immediately produced a layer of auspicious clouds, wrapping Xiaohua up. A kind of serene and festive feeling emerged from Xiaohua's heart. The corner of Xiaohua's mouth curled up, and his body landed on the auspicious signs. As Xiaohua's figure entered, countless strange phenomena appeared within the auspicious signs. Perhaps it was the human race's cultivators standing there proudly, or perhaps it was the human race's warriors standing alone in the wind with golden helmets and silver armors. The historical records that had never been recorded in the ink of the brush, and the memories that had never been left in the hearts of the people, were all revealed here. When he was about to reach the end of the auspicious signs, the figures of the saints recorded in the ancient records appeared one by one. Xiaohua almost cried out in surprise, "Confucius? Mencius? Sunzi?" These saints of the human race all stood there with smiles on their faces, as if they were looking at their own nephews. The saints all held sacred brushes in their hands, and the brushes were covered in crystal-clear ink. The saints' literary song. Suddenly, a very unfamiliar word appeared in his mind, and the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua's voice faintly sounded, "That's right. Fellow immortal. This is the legendary saint's literary song of our scholarly cultivators." At this moment, Xiaohua's body landed on the auspicious signs. The entire sky was covered by endless auspicious clouds and multicolored light. The auspicious clouds and multicolored light were filled with saints, and behind these saints were auspicious dragons and phoenixes, abundant grains, picturesque territories, and other strange phenomena, and all of these strange phenomena were clustered around the head of one person. The gazes of all living beings also fell on one person. This person was the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua. Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands, saying, "Congratulations, fellow immortal. After passing the saint's literary song, you can set foot on the literary song." That's right. The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua looked at the auspicious signs that filled the sky and said somewhat emotionally, "This little one has cultivated the scholarly cultivation for tens of thousands of years. Although I encountered many dangers and obstacles from the scholarly cultivator to the literary saint, I always had a plan in my heart. After reaching the literary saint level, this little one's heart was anxious, because this little one never understood how to set foot on the literary song. After this little one enlightened all living beings, this little one suddenly understood in his heart. The so-called literary song is not something that can be obtained through cultivation. There must be the merit of enlightenment. This merit of enlightenment must be approved by the saints, and only then can the literary song be obtained. This kind of saint's approval cannot be written down in ink, and even more so, it cannot be passed down orally. If it is not a coincidence that truly becomes the power of enlightenment, there will definitely be no opportunity to set foot on the literary song. At this point, the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua looked at the ground again and said somewhat emotionally, "I'm ashamed. Speaking of the merit of enlightenment, the most important is Buddha Bodhi, but I don't know why. Until now, the Buddhist phenomenon has not appeared." No need to care about him. Xiaohua's heart slightly ached. He waved his hand and said, "Everyone has their own fate. Immortal friend, first take this half step and then we'll talk." The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua bowed and said, "I'll have to trouble immortal friend for everything." "No need to thank me." Xiaohua cheerfully nodded his head and took half a step forward. He raised his hand and patted his head. The five-colored true qi gushed out and covered the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua. When the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua entered Xiaohua's body, boom! The entire world rumbled. The auspicious signs in the sky shook and turned into words. The words condensed into lines of poetry. The lines of poetry condensed into articles. The articles condensed into scrolls. An ancient and mysterious voice came out from the scrolls. The literati star above the sages' heads suddenly lit up, and an identical illusory body of the literati star fell down from the literati star and smashed into the scrolls. Countless data fell into the illusory body of the literati star, and the illusory body of the literati star gradually solidified. In just a moment, the literati star that was emitting a resplendent brilliance actually appeared above Xiaohua's head. Heaven, earth, king, family, teacher. Different accents, different languages, each voice louder than thunder came out from the sages' mouths. Every time they shouted a word, the sages' holy brushes pointed at the void. Drops of star-like ink fell on the literate star. The literate star fell 1 foot above Xiaohua's head. After the 5 words were said, the literate star fell on top of Xiaohua's head. Xiaohua activated the 5 Qi's unification. The 5-colored true Qi rushed out of his head and turned into a cloud that supported the literate star. At the same time the 5-colored true Qi rushed out, the 9 continents cauldrons were also unwilling to be left behind. They flew out from the middle dantian and immediately surrounded the literate star. It was as if the stars were revolving around the moon. Whoosh! The literate star produced a 9-colored radiance and fell on top of the 9 cauldrons. Rumble! The 9 cauldrons violently vibrated and flew below the literate star. They turned into a huge 9 continents cauldron in the 9-colored clouds. Woo! The 9 continents cauldrons emitted a glaring halo and supported the literate star to fall on top of Xiaohua's head. After it fell into the middle dantian, the 5 elements true Qi in the middle dantian rushed into the literate star and condensed into a 5-colored seed body. The 5-colored seed body with the face of Xiaohua was precisely the image of an inner sage and an outer monarch. After the seed body gently raised its hand and patted the 9 continents cauldron below it, the cauldron emitted a crisp, clang sound and shook Xiaohua's 5 viscera and 6 bowels. In the midst of the shaking, the literate star disappeared without a trace. The 5-colored seed body also disappeared without a trace. Even the auspicious signs that filled the sky and the smiling sages also disappeared without a trace. Only the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua had his eyes tightly closed. The 5 elements true Qi around his body slowly flowed like the literate star, as if he was in seclusion. Chapter 42:15. Xiaohua understood something in his heart. He knew that his 5 cheese unifications were already close to perfection. He raised his head to look. That literary star that had suppressed all the stars to the point of dimming flashed with a brilliant light, turned into a shooting star and rushed into the void, also disappearing. It was like a banquet that had come to an end. The sky was clear, and the earth was empty. The terrifying auras above the desolate continent began to sweep towards them. "Let's go!" Xiaohua chuckled. His figure had already turned into a gust of wind, leaving behind a dreamy silhouette in the night sky. After flying for several days, Xiaohua saw a towering mountain in front of him. He descended and waved his hand, taking out the ink jade qilin from his space. The black jade qilin landed on the mountain rock. The raging fire beneath his feet melted the rock into liquid. Then he raised his eyes and looked around. A cloud appeared beneath his feet and flew into the air. Then he transmitted his voice, "Jinren, please, he." Xiaohua did not mount the ink jade qilin. Instead, he waved his hand and said, "No need. This Xiao knows that was just a temporary measure. You want this Xiao to let the other desolate beasts go. This Xiao has already left the imperial palace. You can go by yourself." The ink jade qilin was stunned for a moment, then a trace of pleasant surprise appeared in its eyes. But it only lasted for a moment before it shook its head and said, "No. Since I've already promised, I must do it. Even if I'm your mount for a day, it's my promise." "Alright." Xiaohua pondered for a moment, then nodded. "Then you can be this Xiao's mount for a day." With that said, Xiaohua landed on the ink jade qilin's back and sat cross-legged. "Dao Master, where should we go now?" the ink jade qilin asked. Xiaohua smiled wryly. How could he know where the Fortune Gate's disciples were? Moreover, Xiaohua was currently in seclusion. He couldn't disturb him for no reason. "Go find the heaven-devouring beast." Xiaohua casually sent a voice transmission. "Heaven-devouring beast? Oh, I understand." The ink jade qilin was dazed for a moment, then immediately understood. There was no need to determine the direction. A cloud appeared under its feet and it flew towards a certain direction. After flying for a while, the ink jade qilin thought of something. It opened its mouth, and a long crystal flew out. Xiaohua knew that it was obtained in the imperial palace. He waved his hand and caught the crystal. As soon as the crystal landed, a strange voice immediately rang out in Xiaohua's mind. 100 years, heaven-connecting peak, divine artifact arrives. Oh! Xiaohua was taken aback. His gaze landed on the crystal, but he saw that the crystal was sparkling and translucent. Inside the crystal, there was a sparkling light, but that was it. There was nothing else. Xiaohua used his divine perception to scan it again. This crystal was still ordinary, and he couldn't see anything strange about it. Xiaohua asked the ink jade qilin via sound transmission, "Tongtian Peak, where is it?" "I don't know." Black jade qilin answered without hesitation, "None of the mountains on untainted land have names." "That's strange. What does the gatha inside the crystal mean?" Xiaohua frowned and transmitted his voice. The black jade qilin shook its head and wagged its tail. "It's very simple. 100 years later, a divine artifact will appear on the heavenly connecting peak." "Nonsense." Xiaohua laughed and scolded. "I naturally know this sentence, but the key is that no one knows where Tongtian Peak is, so how can we find the divine artifact?" "I don't know about this." The black jade qilin replied. "There's still some time before the 100-year deadline. Maybe we can go out and look for it. Take this crystal stone." Xiaohua threw the crystal in front of the black jade qilin's head and said with a smile, "Maybe this divine artifact is yours. Taoist, you can go by yourself." The black jade qilin didn't catch it, but shook its head and said, "I also obtained this crystal before, and it also mentioned Tongtian Peak. Previously, I was too frivolous, thinking that the entire untainted land was our world. But in the last 10 years, I calmed down and carefully thought about it. Only then did I realize that I was too shallow. Those powerful beasts didn't bother to lower themselves to our level. We only bullied some weak beasts. Not to mention the entire untainted land, we were nothing even in this area of 1,000,000 miles. We were able to enter the imperial court a few times and obtain some weapons, But those were all things that other beasts looked down on. And this time, for that inexplicable thing, we almost all lost our lives. This so-called Heavenlink Peak is probably an extremely dangerous place. How can we possibly survive if we go there with our strength? When I obtained the crystal before, I even discussed with the Black Sky White Tiger how to find it. But I'm determined not to go. Hearing the Black Jade Cheelant's words, Xiaohua really had a feeling of, a scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at with new eyes. But thinking about it, the Black Jade Cheelant followed the other 4 little beasts of the untainted land all day long and acted domineeringly on the untainted land. Who would teach them? I unintentionally imprisoned him for 10 years, precisely giving him the opportunity to meditate and let him see himself clearly. This harvest is more important than obtaining some weapon. Good. Xiaohua slightly pondered, clapped his hands and said with a smile, if you have this idea, your future is immeasurable. Alas. The Black Jade Cheelant heard and couldn't help but sigh. It shook its head and said, I really don't dare to think about the so-called future. To tell you the truth, I did bully that sky-devouring beast some time ago, but I only wanted to snatch a weapon from him and obtain the cultivation method from the weapon. However, my luck wasn't good, and the others weren't good either. We obtained some weapons, but we never obtained the cultivation method from them like in the legends. At this point, the Black Jade Cheelant said self-deprecatingly, if you didn't mention sky-devouring beast, I would have long forgotten about him. On the untainted land, there's only the strong preying on the weak. There's no such thing as bullying. Xiaohua's heart moved as if he thought of something, but he held his chin with his hand and was somewhat hesitant. He didn't speak. It wasn't just a day since he arrived at Sky-Devouring Beast's lair, but unfortunately, Sky-Devouring Beast wasn't there. Xiaohua released his divine perception and scanned several tens of thousands of li, but he didn't find any trace of Sky-Devouring Beast. Xiaohua shook his head slightly, knowing that his fate with Sky-Devouring Beast should be over. He floated down from the Black Jade Cheelant's back and patted its head. Although the Black Jade Cheelant slightly tilted its body to dodge, Xiaohua's hand still fell. After patting it a few times, Xiaohua said, your so-called cultivation method, this old man has it. And it's absolutely suitable for you to cultivate. Really? The Black Jade Cheelant was wild with joy and transmitted, can you give it to me, Taoist? Xiaohua shook his head slightly. This old man is a human. My human race has a saying, cultivation methods can't be imparted lightly. Moreover, this old man doesn't understand you, so how can I give such an important thing to you? Then, the Black Jade Cheelant was somewhat anxious. Then, how about I follow you and be your mount? This old man is different from you. I won't stay in the untainted land for long. Xiaohua evaded. And you belong to this land. I can leave with you. The Black Jade Cheelant answered without hesitation. You don't understand. Xiaohua still shook his head. The place I want to go is beyond your imagination. There aren't any untainted land beasts there, and there isn't such a vast and boundless untainted land. Moreover, that place is full of humans like me, so many that you don't dare to believe it. They might not kill you, but they might use you to kill others. Especially, that place doesn't have such good cultivation conditions as the untainted land. Then, why don't you impart the cultivation method to me? The Black Jade Cheelant didn't understand and asked. This way, I can cultivate here. Teaching you the method to kill the heaven-swallowing beast is the same as me killing the heaven-swallowing beast. Xiaohua could only explain like this. So I can't easily pass this method to you. How can it be the same, understand that I killed it? If I don't teach you, you naturally can't kill it. But because I taught you, the heaven-swallowing beast was killed by you. This is the karma I'm talking about. I don't understand. If you don't want to teach, then forget it. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, if I don't want to teach, I'm afraid I won't even tell you. I just want to let you know that in this untainted land, you may be free and unfettered, but you will never be able to stand at the peak of all living things. If you leave with me, perhaps it will be far more difficult than you think. But when you have the chance to return here, you will discover that the previous peak is merely a mud ball under your feet. However, This difficulty will make you lose your life, will make you regret, and will consign you to eternal damnation. I'll go. The ink jade Qilin's blood boiled after hearing Xiaohua's words, and it shouted without any hesitation. Xiaohua smiled faintly, and an unfathomable expression appeared on his face. He transmitted again, "Don't be anxious, slowly think about it. This old man probably won't be able to leave for several decades. During this period of time, follow this old man. It won't be too late for you to make a decision after this old man leaves." "All right." The ink jade Qilin nodded vigorously and asked, "Now, where are we going?" "That direction, to the stone giant's nest." Xiaohua seemed to be in high spirits as he raised his hand and pointed in a direction. "That's right." Abducting a ink jade Qilin back to the hidden immortal land as a mount, sitting on the back of a demonic beast race great sage, his grandmother, who would dare to challenge Taoist Xiao. Xiaohua's direction might be wrong, but under the ink jade Qilin's guidance, Xiaohua easily found the Fortune Gate's disciples. Xiaohua met the Fortune Gate's disciples and asked about the stone giant's location. He rode on the ink jade Qilin and returned to the hidden immortal land. In less than 10 days, Lu Yi came over with Jiang Hong. Seeing that Xiaohua was safe and sound, the two of them were very happy and came to greet him. Xiaohua helped the two of them up and asked about the Fortune Gate situation before nodding slightly. In the 10 years that Xiaohua disappeared, the Fortune Gate's disciples also taught the desolate continent. The stone giants, waterfish people, golden armored people, wood giants, and earth giants, as well as the wind beasts, armored beasts, void silver monkeys, and other low-level desolate beasts learned how to read and write under the teachings of the Fortune Gate's disciples. They also learned the basic cultivation method. They no longer needed to look for spirit stones to fill their stomachs. Instead, they could directly absorb the heaven and earth origin energy to survive. They also didn't need to gesticulate, but could communicate with words. Some of the desolate beasts could even write records. Chapter 42:16. In the beginning, the Fortune Gate's disciples were taught by laying them flat, but later they felt that this method was too slow, so under Wang Bianfei's suggestion, they decided to teach them by scattering seeds. This was to divide the Fortune Gate disciples into many groups and scatter them all over the desolate mainland like fire seeds. Then, they would educate the surrounding desolate lands' variant races. When these variant races learned how to read and write, and how to cultivate, the Fortune Gate disciples would lead these variant races to other places to educate them. This method of teaching that a single spark could start a prairie fire spread across the entire desolate mainland like a star storm. It was precisely because of this that Confucian cultivator Xiaohua was able to accumulate enough merit points to teach the All Saints Point Out literature in 10 years. Hearing Lu Yi and Jiang Hong's words, Xiaohua nodded and praised. The ancients have said, many people gather firewood to make the fire taller. If Master did this alone, I don't know how long it would take. It is really this old man's fortune to have disciples like you. Isn't this all thanks to Master's teachings? Lu Yi laughed. If Master didn't establish the Fortune Gate, how could us disciples be where we are today? Master? Jiang Hong, who had been wanting to ask, finally found an opportunity to ask, where is disciple's master? Disciple, master is fine. Dragon Vein Xiaohua's voice came from Xiaohua's body. Wait for master to cultivate for a few more years, then I will be completely healed. Yes, disciple understands. Hearing Dragon Vein Xiaohua's voice, Jiang Hong was completely relieved. She looked at the black jade Qilin under Xiaohua and smiled. This is master's new mount, right? Not yet. Xiaohua laughed. This thing is too powerful, it can even injure your master. Master is still considering whether to keep it or not. Hearing that the black jade Qilin could injure Dragon Vein Xiaohua, Jiang Hong's beautiful face paled, and vigilance rose in her eyes. Xiaohua did not mention this matter. Instead, he waved his hand and took out the copper coin. This coin, along with the golden toad's blood, flesh, and stripes, Xiaohua had kept this coin in his space. But who would have thought that several years ago, when Xiaohua was comprehending the laws of heaven and earth, Phoenix Physique Xiaohua took this coin out of his space. Although Phoenix Physique Xiaohua was not good at refining magic tools, this coin was repaired by the laws of heaven and earth after it left the space. It merged with the golden toad stripes. Xiaohua passed the copper coin to Lu Yi and said, "Disciple, this is a magic artifact that I obtained in the ruins, right? Its original power was extremely great, and it wasn't something you could control. Earlier, in order to kill the demon emperor, it had self-detonated, causing its grade to drop significantly. Now that I've refined it, I should be able to use it. Since you don't have a suitable artifact yet, I'll bestow this to you." When Lu Yi heard that this item could kill the demon emperor, his eyes immediately lit up with joy. He reached out to receive it and bowed, "Disciple, thanks master. May I know the name of this item?" "This." Xiaohua pondered for a moment before he said, "This thing can cause a myriad of treasures to fall, so let's call it the copper coin of treasure fall." Disciple understands. Lu Yi held the copper coin in his hand, but his tone was filled with joy. Xiaohua withdrew another jade slip and placed it on his forehead for a short moment before he passed it to Lu and said, "This is the method to refine and control the copper coin of treasure fall. Comprehend it yourself." Lu Yi respectfully received the jade slip and carefully hid it. "Master, disciple still doesn't have a suitable artifact." Seeing that her husband had obtained an ancient artifact, Jiang Hong couldn't stop smiling. However, she still acted coquettishly and said, "The demonic spear that you bestowed to senior brother Yunya is really too powerful. Disciple is very envious." Xiaohua glared at Jiang Hong and said, "How can I have a dragon artifact here? Even your master doesn't have one. Wait for a chance in the future." "Alright, you must remember it in the future." Jiang Hong giggled and said, "You must pay attention to it for disciple." "Oh, that's right, master." Lu Yi naturally thought that Jiang Hong was being petty. At this moment, he interrupted her and took out a few spatial rings from his bosom and handed them to Xiaohua. "These are the things that disciple obtained from this continent in the past 10 years. Xiaohua took the spatial ring and saw that there were many things inside. Some were ordinary giant trees, some were rare spirit grasses, some were strange materials, and so on and so forth. Xiaohua casually glanced at the spatial rings and said, "Not bad. The things here can't be found in the hidden immortal continent. No one knows what they will be used for in the future. All of you can do whatever you want to him." "Hee, disciple will do just that." Lu Yi covered his mouth and laughed. As Lu Yi and Jiang Hong chatted with Xiaohua, they brought Xiaohua towards the lava where the stone giant was. The ink jade qilin beneath Xiaohua asked via sound transmission, "Taoist, these two, are they also humans? Why did you give them that weapon?" "This is my disciple." Xiaohua explained, "That is a magic artifact used by my human race. I taught it to him so that he can protect himself." Can I be your disciple?" the ink jade qilin asked somewhat pleadingly. Xiaohua smiled and said, "I don't want to accept any more disciples now. However, even if you are my mount, I will still teach you cultivation methods and bestow you a magic artifact. You don't have to worry about this." "That's good. That's good." The ink jade qilin heaved a sigh of relief, and the envy in its voice faded a little. After flying for a few more days, Xiaohua's divine sense swept through many places. Just as Lu Yi said, although there were no Fortune Gate disciples in these places, he saw some low-level strange beasts interacting like humans. There were also some strange beasts absorbing origin energy to cultivate. It was completely different from 10 years ago. It was clear that the arrival of the Fortune Gate had indeed changed the desolate continent. Seeing that Lu Yi's words were true, Xiaohua was even happier and praised him. Just as Xiaohua rewarded Lu Yi and Jiang Hong with some cultivation methods and secret techniques, his brows raised. The green-robed Xiaohua's voice sounded in his ears, "Fellow Taoist, why are you only back now? I's transmission array has already been completed." Good. Xiaohua's heart dropped. He looked around and said to Lu Yi and Jiang Hong with a smile, "You two bring the ink jade qilin to the stone giant's lair first. Master still has some matters to attend to, so I will be back soon." "Yes, master." Lu Yi and Jiang Hong bowed to send Xiaohua off. Xiaohua gave some instructions to the ink jade Qilin before disappearing in a flash. Fellow Taoist. After Xiaohua's figure left, Lu Yi and Jiang Hong looked at each other. Lu Yi smiled and said to the black jade Qilin, "Are you willing to let this poor Taoist teach you how to speak words?" Xiaohua teleported to a mountain peak, which was precisely the place where he had crashed into the mysterious desolate continent. On the side of the mountain ridge, there was still a small hole there. However, before Xiaohua could stabilize himself, caw-caw, a few bird cries came from the inside of the cave. A goshawk-like bird of prey flew out from the cave. This bird of prey looked at Xiaohua with extreme vigilance. It was not in a hurry to spread its wings and fly high. Instead, it surrounded the cave and sat cross-legged, as if it was preventing Xiaohua from snatching its territory. If it were not for the terrifying aura on Xiaohua's body, this bird of prey would have already attacked him from the sky. "You beast!" Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He glared at the bird and scolded, "This hole was created by this old man, you still dare to leave? Namo Mithriya Buddha." As soon as Xiaohua's voice fell, Buddha Bodhi's figure quietly appeared beside Xiaohua. He put his palms together and said, "This poor monk greets you." Xiaohua turned his head to look at Buddha Bodhi. There was no change compared to 10 years ago, but Xiaohua was clear in his heart that the #1 teaching merit on the desolate continent should be Buddha Bodhi's. Moreover, Buddha Bodhi must have obtained a lot of merit with the help of Namo Mithriya Buddha's Buddha light. Since the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua could obtain the all-living beings point song, Buddha Bodhi must have obtained even more. It was just that the cultivation of Buddhism was different from that of Confucian cultivators, so the Buddhist vision did not appear on the desolate continent for the time being. However, thinking that the more merit Buddha Bodhi obtained, the closer Namo Mithriya Buddha's Buddha fruit would be to Buddha Bodhi, and the less the pitiful Jiang lure would obtain, Xiaohua's heart ached for no reason. "Greetings, great master." Xiaohua put away his distracting thoughts and bowed in return. Seeing two enemies suddenly appear in front of him, that bird of prey no longer dared to hesitate. With a low cry, it spread its wings and flew away. However, after flying 100 feet away, it still turned its head to look at Xiaohua and Bodhi. As long as a bird has its own nest, it must do its best to protect it, lest it be taken away by others. How can ordinary people not have such thoughts? Buddha Bodhi did not know whether he understood Xiaohua's thoughts or felt the pain in Xiaohua's heart. Looking at the bird of prey in the distance, he said in a faint tone, "This Namo Mithriya Buddha fruit is the Buddha fruit that Lure cultivated for who knows how many lifetimes. If this poor monk snatched it away for no reason, how could he be willing? Therefore, Sandalwood, you don't have to worry too much. This poor monk has already thought it through. When this Buddha fruit returns to the hidden immortal continent, I will definitely return it to Lua. Then I will go to the blood sea on the inside of the space and transform into a devil." Buddha Bodhi's words had actually been said long ago. Mentioning it again at this time, Xiaohua also had mixed feelings. He nodded and said, "No need to mention this matter again. Let's talk about it after we return to the hidden immortal continent." Yes, this poor monk knows that green-robed Sandalwood has already built the teleportation formation. However, Soul Cultivator Sandalwood has not been able to obtain the mark marked by the Great Snow Mountain's divine sense. Buddha Bodhi replied, "And according to green-robed Sandalwood, this matter may be very difficult. Passing through the barrier between the two worlds is naturally extremely difficult." Xiaohua nodded. This matter has already been discussed with fellow Taoists in the ruins earlier. Previously, I thought that the divine sense mark here was the Great Snow Mountain. I didn't expect it to be this mysterious Great Desolation continent. Although I still don't know why, but... At this point, Xiaohua took a deep breath, looked up at the starry sky, and said, "As long as there is a trace of hope, we must use all of our strength to do it. Otherwise, when the opportunity comes and we're not ready, it'll be too late for regrets." Chapter 42:17. Yes, this place is not bad, but it is not your home. Buddha Bodhi sighed softly. The people and things you are familiar with are all on a distant continent. Buddha Bodhi's words immediately touched Xiaohua's heart. He raised his head to look around the wilderness and sighed, "What is home? Is homeland? Family? Or is it a childhood memory?" What fellow Taoist said is right. While they were talking, the green-robed Xiaohua also arrived with a solemn expression. There might be fellow Taoist's spiritual sense mark here. It might be related to fellow Taoist's home. However, there are no humans on this continent. Even if it is fellow Taoist's home, it is a matter of billions of years later. The current desolate continent has nothing to do with you. The same people, the same place, but the time is different. This place and the people are different. Xiaohua sighed. Perhaps this is the place where I am closest to my dream, but with the law of time, I am the furthest away from my dream. Knowing where your dream is, doesn't that mean you have a direction to pursue your dream? Soul cultivator Xiaohua also stepped out of the void and said, even if we work hard, there will be a day when we can break through the chains of the law of time and capture our dreams. Xiaohua smiled and saluted, "Many thanks, fellow Taoists." With so many fellow Taoists on the road of life, this road is no longer lonely. You're welcome, you're welcome. The green-robed Xiaohua waved his hand. Everything can wait until we return to the great snow mountain. All right. Xiaohua nodded, then asked Buddha Bodhi, "Where is fellow Taoist Tempered Bones?" The Fortune Gate's disciples encountered some problems while educating. They seemed to have encountered a very powerful desolate beast. Yuanya and the other disciples couldn't handle it, so Tempered Bones Sandalwood rushed over to help. The transmission array has been built. With the Great Snow Mountain's spiritual sense mark, we can use it at any time. Can the Fortune Gate's disciples return to Shenhua continent now? Xiaohua pondered for a moment and asked in a low voice. The Fortune Gate's disciples could naturally return to the Shenhua continent at any time, but Xiaohua was worried that the desolate continent's teachings would be abandoned halfway. However, Xiaohua suddenly thought of something and quickly asked, "Oh right, this Taoist asked the Fortune Gate's disciples to look for a suitable place for the human race to thrive. Is there any news?" Before Buddha Bodhi could speak, the green-robed Xiaohua asked, "Fellow Taoist is looking for a suitable place for the incense cult's disciples?" "That's right." Xiaohua explains, "The disciples of the Fragrant Order came from the ruins. Their techniques are different from those of the hidden immortal continent. They might not be suitable to follow us to the hidden immortal continent." It's not that it's not necessarily. It's definitely not suitable. The green-robed Xiaohua resolutely and decisively said, "When we arrive at the hidden immortal continent, how can the incense cult's orthodoxy be preserved? If they weren't killed by the Confucian cultivators, then they would die because they couldn't adapt to the environment of the hidden immortal continent. The desolate continent, the Shao? Cloud desolate heaven and earth Shao? The world heavenly world? The best part is that there are no sects fighting with the incense cult here. Unfortunately, the desolate continent is very different from the ruins." Buddha Bodhi shook his head and said, "There are desolate beasts everywhere. How can there be a place for the human race? If the incense cult's 30,000 disciples were placed here, they would become the desolate beasts' food in a few days. We can help them build a defensive formation." Soul cultivator Xiaohua interjected. "Help for now, but not forever." Xiaohua ancestor Xiaohua disagreed. "How can a defensive formation help the incense cult defend against the endless desolate beasts?" "Not necessarily." Soul cultivator Xiaohua retorted. "If the defensive formation is strong enough, and the incense cult's disciples can cultivate into a few high-level cultivators before the formation collapses, they may be able to establish a foundation on the desolate continent." "Not likely." Buddha Bodhi said, "This monk has been enlightening the desolate continent for more than a decade, so I have some understanding of the desolate continent. If the Fortune Gate's disciples are not strong enough and do not have the advantage of numbers, it will be very difficult for them to take even half a step on the desolate continent." Xiaohua's original intention was to ask Buddha Bodhi, and now that he heard Buddha Bodhi's words, he somewhat understood. However, he still asked, "So, in these years, the Fortune Gate's disciples have not found a suitable place for the human race to reproduce?" Buddha Bodhi nodded, then said, "As for the Fortune Gate's disciples, They have spread the fire seeds of enlightenment everywhere the human race can reach. With these fire seeds, the prelude to enlightenment has already begun. Since the prelude has already begun, the person who started the prelude is naturally no longer needed. Xiaohua had already asked Xiaohua about the situation of the Fortune Gate's disciples, and from Xiaohua's words, he understood the significance of the Fortune Gate's disciples spreading the fire seeds. Hearing Buddha Bodhi's words, he immediately ordered, "In that case, Grandmaster, please pass down the Fortune Gate's order for all Fortune Gate's disciples to return. Prepare to return to the Shenhua mainland." Yes, this monk understands. Buddha Bodhi did not dare to delay. After listening to Xiaohua's order, he stepped on a Buddha cloud and left. Xiaohua then turned to the green-robed Xiaohua and said, "Let's go, fellow Taoist, let us see how good the transmission array you built is." "Ha, fellow Taoist, please." The green-robed Xiaohua was as proud as when he was in the ruins. He led Xiaohua to the foot of the mountain, but when he saw the capital star formation at the foot of the mountain, Xiaohua chuckled. He pointed at the formation and asked, "If our grand formation can't protect the lives of the incense-spreading cult's disciples, how can this grand formation protect the transmission array?" The grand formation is secondary, the main thing is that fellow Taoist is here. The green-robed Xiaohua was very sophisticated, and he flattered Xiaohua, leaving Xiaohua speechless. When they entered the grand formation, they saw a transmission array standing in midair. It was much smaller than the grand formation they built in the ruins. Moreover, there were 9 grooves on the grand formation, which seemed to be used to place spirit stones in ordinary transmission arrays. Seeing this kind of transmission array, Xiaohua was really surprised. He frowned and said, "Fellow Taoist, what we said before. I thought it was a joke. To be transmitted from the great desolate continent to the great snow mountain, we have to pass through realms. This realm is even more solid than the moon god realm and Taibai star realm, that could be the barrier between the higher realm and the lower realm. Fellow Taoist, can this kind of transmission array work?" The green-robed Xiaohua replied with confidence. "The ancients said that the meat in the bun is not in the folds. Fellow Taoist, don't think that I's transmission array is small, it is more powerful than the previous ones." Soon after, the green-robed Xiaohua explained the advantages of this transmission array and finally pointed to the 9 grooves and said, "When the transmission array is activated, it can reduce the interference of the barrier between the 2 realms and establish communication with the Great Snow Mountain's divine sense mark. When the location of the transmission array is confirmed, fellow Taoist and fellow Taoist soul cultivator can use the south opposite north technique to stabilize the transmission array." Moreover, soul cultivator Xiaohua continued the green-robed Xiaohua's words and explained, "The barrier between the 2 realms sounds very difficult to break through, and ordinary cultivators can only pass through it when they are ascending. If it is from the higher realm to the lower realm, it should be called a reverse passage. It is even more difficult than passing through. However, fellow Taoist seems to have forgotten, if we can feel the Great Snow Mountain's divine sense mark, what does that mean? It means that the reverse passage between the 2 realms has been opened, and we only need to control the transmission array well, and can accurately find the location marked by the divine sense mark." "Good." Xiaohua clapped and said, "I understand what you 2 fellow Taoists are saying. Thank you for your hard work, fellow Taoists. Now, everything is ready, except for the east wind. This east wind is really hard to blow." Green-robed Xiaohua spoiled the mood. "Who knows when the reverse passage will open? We will wait here and cultivate." Scholarly cultivator Xiaohua didn't care, and said with a smile, "It's better if we can wait, but if we can't, then we might as well cultivate until the end." Xiaohua's heart was moved, and he nodded slightly. "Fellow Taoist soul cultivator is right, we all have our own cultivation techniques. If it really can't be done, then we will settle down here." Xiaohua had just finished speaking when Buddha Bodhi entered the array and said with his palms pressed together, "Sandalwood, the order has been passed down. The Fortune Gate disciples will return in a few days. We will wait here." Xiaohua looked around and said with a smile, "As long as we leave a divine sense mark, we can use the south opposite north technique to rush back at any time, so why wait here?" Why don't we take advantage of this time to travel around the desolate continent? That's right, it should be like this. Green-robed Xiao Hua was overjoyed. I haven't gone out since I arrived here. Of course we can leave a divine sense mark, but a divine sense mark is also a kind of hidden danger. I have many soul cultivator secret techniques that can be used with divine sense marks. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua suggested, why don't we let I leave a temporary mark that can be used? When we return, the mark will disappear. Naturally, Xiao Hua agreed. After Xiao Hua cast his spell, the group arrived at the bottom of the lava where the stone giant resided. Seeing that Xiao Hua had returned, the little stone giant who had been saved by Xiao Hua became somewhat timid. However, he still bravely stepped forward, bowed and saluted. This little one thanks Taoist for saving my life, and also thanks Taoist for everything you've done for my tribe. Looking at the stone giant that was much bigger than him, Xiao Hua thought of the past, and then looked at the present. He felt that everything the Fortune Gate disciples had done in the past 10 years was more valuable than anything they had done before. He smiled and nodded, little guy, although you and I don't belong to the same tribe, or even not the same race, I feel that everything in the world has a soul and must have love. Today, I helped your stone giant tribe with the help of the human race, and I also hope that your stone giant tribe can help other races in the future. Moreover, if there are any humans in the future, I also hope that you can treat them well. This little one will remember Tao Master's words, and will certainly take action. The little stone giant's words made Xiao Hua happy. Chapter 42:18. A while later, the stone giant patriarch also came over to greet Xiao Hua. He chatted with Xiao Hua for a while before leaving respectfully. However, from the beginning to the end, the stone giant patriarch did not look at the Buddha shrine they had been worshipping. Xiao Hua stood in the lava and scanned the area with his divine sense. He saw many stone giants in the distance. Some were cultivating, some were busy, and some were looking for newly condensed essence stones. The lava no longer looked like it was on the verge of death. Xiao Hua's mood became better. However, when his divine sense fell on the Buddha shrine, his heart skipped a beat. This was because even though the Buddha statue was sitting cross-legged in the niche and was complete, the crack from the top down was still very clear. There were even 2 streams of crimson lava flowing out from between the eyes of the Buddha statue, like 2 streams of blood tears. Let's go outside and wait for a while. Xiao Hua's tone was cold as he said this. He then flew out of the lava without looking back. Confucian Xiao Hua and his other avatars were confused. Buddha Bodhi's Buddhist sense swept over the Buddha shrine. He put his palms together and chanted Buddha's name as he followed Xiao Hua to the surface. At this time, there were already some disciples who were relatively close to the mountain. When the disciples saw Xiao Hua and the others standing on the mountain peak, they were very happy in their hearts. They didn't dare to come over and greet them, so they bowed from afar and then went to their own place to sit down cross-legged. Xiao Hua stood on the mountain peak, but he did not release his divine sense. He only looked at the red sunset in the distance and did not speak for a long time, allowing the orange sunset to illuminate his face. Seeing that the curtain of night was approaching, Xiao Hua spoke. When I'm cultivating or running around, I don't feel anything. But when I'm idle and calm, looking at the setting sun, there's always a kind of hesitation in my heart. It's as if something has left, or as if I'm one step closer to the end. Sometimes I don't want night to fall, and sometimes I don't want dawn to come. Xiao Hua's words were profound. The green-robed Xiao Hua and the others stared at each other, not knowing how to answer. Buddha Bodhi opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but when the words reached his mouth, they turned into Namo Maitreya Buddha. How are the casualties of my Fortune Gate's disciples in the past 10 years? Xiao Hua asked another question out of the blue. Buddha Subhuti was slightly taken aback before he shook his head and said, "This penniless monk does not know. Sandalwood, you can ask Fujiwen. However, this penniless monk believes that there should be not too much." Soul cultivator Xiao Hua felt a little awkward and hurried to help Huang Xiaolong out. After all, the Fortune Gate's disciples went out in a battle group. It's already good enough that they didn't bully other beasts. Just as they were talking, a divine sense swept over from afar. When it landed on Xiao Hua's body, it immediately withdrew. A voice called out in pleasant surprise, "Master, you've returned?" The one who came along with the voice was Wang Yifei. "And Master is back," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "What have you gained in these 10 years? Of course there is." Wang Bianfei smiled as he took out some universe bangles from his bosom and said, "There are treasures everywhere in the prehistoric continent. I want to take everything I see." Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It seemed that even his own disciple was clear about his little problem of being greedy. As soon as they met, he wanted to hand over the things he collected to him. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "Master is asking about your cultivation." "Don't worry, Master." Wang Bianfei was still smiling mischievously like the little boy he used to be. He answered, "Others may not know about this disciple's talent, but how could Master not know? Even if this disciple doesn't sleep, I can still cultivate." Xiao Hua glared at Wang Bianfei and scolded, "A person must be humble. Don't you know that there is an ancient saying, 'Pride makes people regress'? Disciple is only speaking the truth." Wang Bianfei rolled his eyes and said with grievance, "But if Master also gives this disciple a spiritual treasure, this disciple's cultivation will definitely be more powerful." Xiao Hua knew that Wang Bianfei was envious of Yuanya's bone spear, so he waved his hand and said, "Everyone has their own opportunities. Your two senior brothers will naturally meet each other when their fate arrives. When your fate arrives, you will also get it." Other than senior brother Yuna, which other senior brother has such good fortune? What kind of spiritual treasure did he get from Master? Wang Bianfei stomped his feet in exasperation. Xiao Hua laughed, "It's Louis. It's just a copper coin of treasure fall, it's nothing. Why don't you ask him for it?" Wang Bianfei had always had a similar temper with Lu. Hearing that Lu Yi got a treasure, other than envy, he didn't have any other thoughts. He still begged, "Master, you are too biased. This disciple still doesn't have a suitable spiritual treasure. There are so many good things in your Kunlun immortal realm, can't you give this disciple one?" As he spoke, Wang Bianfei handed the heaven and earth bracelet in his hand to Xiao Hua and said, "This disciple will exchange these things, okay?" "Tise." Xiao Hua waved his hand, "Keep these things for yourself. Don't you know what a spiritual treasure is? How can it be so easy to get it?" At this point, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "How about this? If you find a dual cultivation partner, I can consider giving you a spiritual treasure." "Master, are you sure?" Wang Bianfei jumped up again. "There is no human race on this primeval desolate continent. Where do you want me to find one? Are there few female cultivators on Shenhua continent?" Xiao Hua asked curiously, "Don't you like any of them?" "I don't feel anything, I just don't like them." Wang Bianfei shrugged, as if he was very familiar with them. Xiao Hua understood at a glance. Lu Yi and Jiang Hong probably played matchmaker for Wang Bianfei, and Wang Bianfei definitely didn't like any of them. "Don't tell me you want to ascend to the immortal world and find another fairy?" Xiao Hua casually scolded. "Oh, right, Master, if you didn't mention the immortal world, this disciple forgot one thing." Wang Bianfei suddenly woke up and hurriedly lowered his head to search the heaven and earth bracelet in his hand for a moment, and took out a 3-inch-long phoenix hairpin. As soon as this phoenix hairpin was taken out, it immediately emitted an aura that Xiao Hua had never seen before. However, this aura gave Xiao Hua a vague sense of familiarity. Xiao Hua looked at it again and saw that the phoenix hairpin was sparkling and translucent. It was neither gold nor wood, and was made of a material that Xiao Hua had never seen before. Moreover, the phoenix hairpin was covered with spots that resembled stars. Each of the spots emitted an indescribable fluctuation. Xiao Hua was slightly stunned and asked curiously, "What is this? Where did you get it from?" "This was picked up by this disciple from a huge tree in a valley 3 years ago. This disciple doesn't know what it is, but this disciple..." Wang Bianfei's face was slightly red, and he whispered, after this disciple got it, he occasionally met an extremely beautiful female cultivator in his dreams. She seemed to be trapped somewhere and wanted to say something to this disciple, but this disciple couldn't understand a single word. "Oh, Xiaohua was greatly surprised. He raised his hand, and the phoenix hairpin fell into his hand, and he said, "You wouldn't be like Fujiwen meeting an immortal palace female official imprisoned in this phoenix hairpin, right?" However, when Xiaohua's divine sense swept over it, the phoenix hairpin seemed to be invisible, and his divine sense couldn't detect it at all. Xiaohua thought for a moment, and raised his hand. A thick lightning thread stretched out from his finger, and the lightning thread wrapped around an extremely thin crystal wire. However, when the lightning thread fell into the phoenix hairpin only trembled slightly and didn't even release any brilliance. Strange. Subsequently, Xiaohua tried soul cultivation, Confucian cultivation, and other methods, but the phoenix hairpins still didn't move. Forget it. Xiaohua helplessly returned the phoenix hairpin to Wang Bianfei and said, "You'd better keep this thing for yourself. Wait, when this master ascends to the immortal world, immortal world, wait." Speaking until here, Xiaohua cried out involuntarily, "Yes, this is an item from the immortal world. The markings on this phoenix hairpin are the immortal world's runes. These markings are very similar to some of the immortal world's cultivation methods that master obtained." Damn it, could it be? This phoenix hairpin really is a fairy from the immortal world? It can't be, right? Wang Bianfei also looked at the phoenix hairpin in Xiaohua's hand in disbelief. This disciple casually picked it up. After Xiaohua recovered from his shock, he stuffed the phoenix hairpin into Wang Bianfei's hand. Fujiwen's female official wife was also picked up inside the mountain rocks. "Your luck has come, you actually picked up a fairy from the immortal world. You'd better keep this phoenix hairpin for yourself. Wait until the day you ascend to the immortal world, maybe you'll be able to open the restriction, and you'll finally be able to marry her." Wang Bianfei looked at the phoenix hairpin in his hand. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry awkwardly. Xiaohua might not know, but he was very clear in his heart. Several of his martial brothers often joked about Fujiwen's matter, saying that was picked up. He didn't expect that he would also be involved in this kind of matter. "Enough." Xiaohua rolled his eyes at him, pointed in a direction and said, "Don't laugh silly. Louis is back, you go and pick him up." "Yes, master." Wang Bianfei hurriedly put the phoenix hairpin into his bosom. Just as he was about to fly, he stopped and said in a low voice, "Master, you can't tell this to the other martial brothers." "I know." Xiaohua nodded. "Master will keep it a secret for you." "Thank you, master." Wang Bianfei happily left, but just as he flew 100 feet, the green-robed Xiaohua said with a smile, If you don't tell your martial brothers, you can tell your martial sister or martial sister." When these words fell into Wang Bianfei's ears, Wang Bianfei almost fell from the sky. "Go, go," Xiaohua said with a smile. "Don't listen to your martial uncle's nonsense, he's just joking with you." After Wang Bianfei flew away, Xiaohua thought of something. He gave the green-robed Xiaohua the secret sound transmission technique that Devouring Heaven gave him, and said with a smile, "The cultivation world is vast and boundless. There are also many cultivators in it. However, there's a language barrier between them. It's quite troublesome. This secret technique should be very useful, fellow Taoist. Take a look and see how you can modify it so that ordinary cultivators can use it. At the very least, you can let Wang Bianfei cultivate. That female immortal should be using the language of the immortal world. We can't understand. If Wang Bianfei understands, maybe he can discover something. It's useful for us to leave the great wasteland continent." Chapter 42:19. Oh, is there such a magical technique in this world? Quickly, let me take a look. The green-robed Xiaohua was overjoyed. He hurriedly received the jade eyes and sat down cross-legged to study them. Buddha Subhuti asked from the side, "Tan Yu, what about Dragon Vein Tan Yu and Phoenix Physique Tan Yu? How are they? Why haven't they come out?" Xiaohua answered indifferently, "They were injured in the imperial palace and are still in seclusion. Maybe they will come out in a few years." "Namo Mithreya," Buddha Subhuti chanted, then sat down cross-legged without saying anything else. Half an hour later, the black jade Chilin's silhouette appeared on the distant horizon. The dark green flames around him looked very strange in the dark night. The black jade Qilin's soul force swept over the surroundings, and when he saw so many humans he was shocked. He was even more respectful when he saw Xiaohua. Xiaohua was stunned when he heard the black jade Qilin's words. Master, if you don't accept this lowly one as your disciple, this lowly one is willing to be the demonic beast guarding Master's cultivation dwelling. Xiaohua looked at Lu Yi behind the black jade Qilin and asked, Do you know what guarding a cultivation dwelling is? The black jade Qilin didn't seem to understand Xiaohua's words. It pondered for a moment before stammering, No. Obviously, the black jade Qilin's first sentence was taught by Lu Yi. The black jade Qilin could recite it very well, and its flattering tone was similar to a black bear's. Xiaohua only wanted to kidnap a demonic beast to be his mount, and Lu Yi wanted to trick the black jade Qilin into guarding the fortune gate. Like teacher, like disciple. Xiaohua chuckled, waving his hand. We'll talk about this later, you wait at the side. Yes. The black jade Qilin pondered for a moment, then stood not far from Xiaohua. Several hours later, the moon gradually set, revealing the first glimmer of dawn in the distance. Xiaohua's divine sense swept out and saw a group of Fortune Gate's disciples flying back, but there was no sign of Yuan Ya. Xiaohua's brows furrowed as he ordered, Lu Yi, Jiang Hong, Wang Bianfei, go greet Yuan Ya, they seem to have run into trouble. Yes, disciple understands. Lu Yi didn't dare to be negligent. He took Jiang Hong and Wang Bianfei and prepared to fly away. However, Xiaohua's heart stirred. He looked at the ink jade Qilin and sent a sound transmission. If you have nothing to do, you can also go with them. You are extremely familiar with the desolate continent. All right. The ink jade Qilin was standing in midair, feeling bored. Hearing Xiaohua's words, it hurriedly flew to Lu Yi's side and followed the three of them to step on the clouds and leave. In the following days, Fu Jiwen and the other Fortune Gate disciples returned to the Fortune Gate. The group of Fortune Gate disciples organized themselves and handed over the spoils they had plundered on the desolate mainland to Fu Jiwen and the others. Fu Jiwen then distributed the medicinal pellets, secret techniques, and other treasures that Xiaohua had given him according to each disciple's harvest. After a few more days of work, Xiaohua finally took out the Kunlun mirror and sent all the Fortune Gate disciples into his space. I'm afraid there's trouble again. Seeing that the bone-honing Xiaohua had not returned for a long time, and Lu Yi and the others had not returned, Xiaohua already had a plan in mind. He asked Fu Jiwen, have all the Fortune Gate disciples returned? Other than the fallen disciples and the disciples who followed junior brother Yuana, the rest have returned to Shenhua mainland. Fu Jiwen knew that Xiaohua was soft-hearted, so he obediently avoided mentioning the number of fallen disciples and answered. N. Xiaohua nodded and asked again, do you know where Yuan Ya and the others went? Disciple knows. Fu Jiwen replied, our respective locations were arranged by Martial Uncle Bodhi and Martial Uncle Wenxiu. We all know each other's location. Then you lead the way. Xiaohua stood up and urged, Master just happens to want to gain experience on the desolate mainland. Why don't you take a look at what kind of powerful opponents your Martial Uncle Bonehoning encountered? Fu Jiwen was Xiaohua's eyes and ears on the hidden immortal mainland. Now that he heard Xiaohua's words, he naturally understood Xiaohua's meaning. He pointed in the direction Lu Yi and the others went and respectfully said, Master, let's go there. Fellow Taoists. Xiaohua looked at the green-robed Xiaohua and the others who also stood up and said with a smile, how about following I to explore the desolate mainland? Good. Soul cultivator Xiaohua and Buddha Bodhi responded. One went to the mysterious dark clouds, while the other went to the Naiwan Palace. On the other hand, the green-robed Xiaohua did not rush to enter the space. Instead, he went to Xiaohua's lower dantian. However, just as his figure entered his dantian, a purple light shone and a wave of profound energy rushed into his body. The green-robed Xiaohua was so scared that his face turned pale. He hurriedly escaped from his lower dantian and cried out in alarm, Fellow Taoist, what did you do to our invisible nascent soul? Hee, fellow Taoist, don't worry. Xiaohua replied with a smile. The invisible nascent soul had a fortuitous encounter and obtained a wisp of purple qi. This purple chi was not recorded in the Tao Gate's ancient records. It should be an item from the upper realm. The invisible nascent soul just came into contact with this item and has already stepped into the late stage of the Mahayana realm. It can enter the tribulation at any time. Oh, it should be said that it is not too far away from the ninth tribulation. You are still not familiar with this purple chi, so you naturally can't control the invisible nascent soul. The green-robed Xiao Hua pondered for a moment and asked in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, do you think our luck is too good? This kind of divine item is rare even in the upper realm, but we actually obtained it so easily. Don't tell me you don't know that this item is related to the heavenly Tao. Even if our luck is good, it is also a blessing in disguise." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "If not for the heavenly prison's tribulation, how could you and I come here? For us cultivators from the lower realm, everything on this desolate mainland, including the stones under our feet, is precious." "That's true," the green-robed Xiao Hua said. Xiao Hua's mind entered the space. "I will first modify this sound transmission technique and see if I can comprehend the profound meaning released by the invisible nascent soul. Then I will try to control the invisible nascent soul." After arranging several clones, Xiao Hua's mind came out of the space. He looked at Fujiwen who was flying in front of him and said, "Just fly like this." Fujiwen replied, "It should be in this direction." "Alright." Xiao Hua waved his big sleeve and covered Fujiwen with the heaven and earth sleeve technique. Then his figure swayed, leaving behind a string of afterimages. Xiao Hua teleported into the distance. Unfortunately, after a few times, Xiao Hua had no choice but to let Fujiwen out and let him point out the direction again. That Fujiwen indeed had this ability. No matter how complicated Xiao Hua's teleportation was, he could still find the direction without any sign of getting lost. In fact, Xiao Hua couldn't be blamed. The entire desolate mainland was filled with incomparably huge mountain ranges. On top of the mountain ranges were craggy rocks and occasionally huge trees. There wasn't much greenery, most of them were needle-shaped leaves that were greenish-yellow in color. Any cultivator who flew thousands of li and took a closer look would find that the scenery was not much different from before. Other than the blazing sun in the sky that allowed them to identify the direction, other aspects were really hard to identify. "Master?" After flying for several days, Fujiwen said in a low voice, "This desolate mainland is a little strange. Disciple feels that wherever it is called a lower realm, the 5 elements of heaven and earth are abundant and balanced, and the yin and yang energies are clearly separated. Why is the water element energy here so scarce? How did this desolate mainland form?" Xiao Hua had naturally thought about it. He smiled and said, "Master also thought about this that day. But this place is different from the hidden immortal mainland. It is a higher realm, and there are many mysteries that we don't know. Anyway, we won't stay here for long, and the Fortune Gate won't establish a sect again. Why should we care so much?" "Yes, disciple understands." Fujiwen was already used to Xiao Hua's laziness. While nodding his head, he thought of something and hesitated slightly before saying, "Master, disciple doesn't know if junior brother Lu has reported to Master." "What is it?" "When Master met him earlier, he told Master a lot of things. I don't know which one you're talking about." Xiao Hua urged his body and didn't pay much attention to it and casually replied. Fujiwen sighed and said, "AI, it seems like Louis didn't mention it to Master. After this guy got married, he started to have many thoughts." "Hee, isn't that normal?" Xiao Hua secretly laughed and replied with sorrow in his heart, "There is a saying in the ancient times, after getting married, one forgets his mother. Although Jiang Hong's character is very good, she is after all a dragon and also a woman. Her heart is definitely small. Lu Yi must have discussed some things with you and the other senior brothers and also reported to Master. Now, the first person he wants to find is Jiang Hong. Some things involve the interests of the family. Jiang Hong will think a lot, and he may not report to Master. Don't worry, when you marry by an, I'm afraid it will be the same." Speaking of this, Xiao Hua's heart naturally thought of Fairy Hong Xia who was far away in the Xiaoyu continent. Wasn't it because of Fairy Hong Xia's small heart that things got to this point? After not seeing each other for hundreds of years, what was the difference between her and Xue Xue? Some things can be left unsaid, but some things can't be reported. Fu Jiwen had never seen Xiao Hua's dual cultivation partner. Seeing that Xiao Hua's words were full of experience, he knew that Master felt something and smiled slightly. Moreover, women are different from women. N is a female official of the Immortal Palace, so she should be very clear about this. Xiao Hua knew that the woman Fu Jiwen was talking about should be Xn. He didn't explain and asked, N, what does Lu Yi want to report? Is it the dispute between the Yu family and the Lu family? That kind of small matter happens every day in the Shenhua continent. What kind of trouble could the elders of those two families cause with them keeping watch in their families? Fu Jiwen's face turned serious as he replied, this kind of small matter is not worth mentioning. Then what is it? Xiao Hua frowned slightly. Previously, Lu Yi mentioned to Disciple that when he just came out from the Shenhua continent, he had a feeling that he was being spied on. Fu Jiwen replied, it's just that this feeling of being spied on was really vague and even disappeared in a flash. Lu Yi wasn't sure, so he didn't dare to report it to Master. Chapter 42:20. Fu Jiwen peeked at Xiao Hua's reaction and continued, however, Disciple feels that we should be careful since we are far away from home. Although Master's magic power is boundless, even a wise man can make mistakes. If Disciple finds anything, it's better to tell Master as soon as possible. Therefore, Disciple asked him to report to Master, but he felt that if he could find it, Master would definitely find it too. Moreover, there are many strong people in the great desolate continent. It's normal for some strong people to spy on us. When Xiao Hua heard this, his figure suddenly stopped. The feeling of teleportation was like a stormy wave crashing into Fu Jiwen's Naiwen Palace. Fu Jiwen suddenly felt dizzy. Of course, with Fu Jiwen's cultivation, this dizziness only lasted for a moment. When the secret technique circulated, Fu Jiwen immediately returned to normal. When did this happen? Later, did Lu Yi find anything else? Xiao Hua naturally knew about Lu Yi's talent. This kind of strange talent was innate, not acquired through cultivation. What Lu Yi could detect, he really might not be able to detect. Moreover, after he arrived in the great desolate continent, he did not find any consciousness secretly spying on them. If there was a great enemy nearby, Lu Yi found such a strange situation and did not report it. It was really a crime worthy of death. Fu Jiwen saw Xiao Hua's face change greatly and hurriedly comforted, Master, don't worry. This is something that happened when we just started to educate the strange beasts. It has been more than 10 years now, isn't there nothing wrong? Presumably, Lu Yi did not find anything unusual and did not report it to Master. Xiao Hua nodded and did not speak much. His face was a little gloomy. Fu Jiwen said again, when Disciple and Lu Yi went in different directions, I asked him again. He was a little hesitant. He should not have that kind of feeling again, right? Otherwise, he would definitely report it. I hope so. Xiao Hua had some indescribable feelings in his heart. It was like a child that he had painstakingly raised, who had always listened to him, suddenly grew up one day and had his own ideas. He did not particularly listen to his words and began to have his own secrets. The 10 spirit clones began to gradually become independent. Now, these children like disciples began to have their own forces. However, Xiao Hua immediately smiled again. Even though the Fu Jiwen in front of him didn't look any different from the Fu Jiwen he met in the past, he was still thousands of years old after all. Wasn't Lu Yi the same? How could he possibly ask her to be the same as before? Can't you let her have her own thoughts? He was changing and so were his disciples. As long as they were loyal to the Fortune Gate and were filial to him, what else could he ask for? Humph! Xiao Hua snorted coldly from his nose and scolded, Lu Yi's wife is from the Dragon Clan. I won't say anything, but your wife is a female official of the Immortal Palace. When you marry her in the future, paying respects to her in the morning and evening is indispensable. Otherwise, I won't give any betrothal gifts. It can't be, Master. Fu Jiwen's face was full of bitterness. Momo was controlled by the princess in the imperial court. Can't she be free at home? Heaven, earth, monarch, family, teacher. Xiao Hua curled his lips and said word by word, teacher has taken up quite a few. If you want to marry me, you have to be obedient. All right. Fu Jiwen naturally didn't understand the true meaning of Xiao Hua's words, but seeing that Xiao Hua's mood had improved, he could only agree with a bitter face. After a few more days passed, Xiao Hua's divine consciousness swept across the mountain peaks in the distance. He narrowed his eyes and said, disciple, go back to Shenhua continent. Master will help your uncle master. Yes, master. Fu Jiwen had long been used to being carried around, so he casually agreed. Xiao Hua took out the Kunlun mirror, and in a flash of light, Fu Jiwen was sucked into the space. 10,000 li away, there was a plain rarely seen in the desolate continent. The land stretched as far as the eye could see, and at this moment, it was covered in thick vines. These vines were bronze in color, and there were faint cloud patterns on them, as if they were natural patterns. They emitted faint fluctuations, and when these fluctuations fell into the air, they actually flickered with sparks. The vines were scattered with broken stones and wood, and it looked very messy. Among the broken stones, there were many bones and flesh. Some of these bones were very big, while others were very small. Occasionally, there were a dozen or so human skeletons hidden among these bones. These human skeletons were without a doubt Fortune Gate's disciples. In the sky above the vines and bones, within a radius of several hundred li, there were loud battle cries. Thousands of lizard-like beasts surrounded and attacked several hundred Fortune Gate's disciples. At this time, the Fortune Gate's disciples were in a battle formation, each of them holding a magic artifact and spirit artifact. They circulated their magic power and fought against the lizard-like beasts. Outside the group of Fortune Gate's disciples, there were several dozen lizard-like beasts surrounding a cultivator, and they were also madly attacking. These cultivators were none other than Lu Yi, Jiang Hong, Yuan Ye, and Wang Bianfei. At this time, Jiang Hong had already revealed her true form. Dragon patterns flickered all over her body, and her huge dragon claws could tear a mountain apart. However, when such a powerful attack landed on the lizard-like beast, sparks flew everywhere. The lizard-like beast fell 100 zhang in the air, but it immediately flew back up as if nothing had happened and blocked Jiang Hong's attack. This was also the strange part. The several dozen lizard-like beasts only surrounded Jiang Hongna and did not take the initiative to attack, as if they were afraid of her. The other Fortune Gate's disciples were not so lucky. Yuan Ye was surrounded by the most lizard-like beasts, and his physique was the largest. Yuan Ye had already activated his avatar, and a bronze luster surrounded his body. He held the devil hammer with both hands, and every time he swung it, the void cracked. When the lizard-like beasts saw the devil hammer coming at them, they dodged to the side, not wanting to meet the devil hammer head-on. However, when the devil hammer missed, the surrounding lizard-like beasts either spat out wind and fire as they pounced on Yuan Ye, or swung their tails at him. It looked like they were evenly matched. Lu Yi and Wang Bianfei were no match for Yuan Ye, as they could not win by brute force. Although Lu Yi had just obtained the copper coin of Treasurefall, it could not be used in this battle. Like Wang Bianfei, he had no choice but to use his previous treasures. Although those treasures were sharp, when they landed on the lizard-like skin of these lizard-like beasts, they could only produce sparks, unable to cause any real damage. However, Lu Yi and Wang Bianfei were relieved that they had the black jade Qilin by their side. This Qilin was well versed in the desolate continent's way of fighting. While fighting against the lizard-like beasts, it did not forget to help Lu Yi and Wang Bianfei, greatly reducing the pressure on them. The battle between the group of Fortune Gate disciples and the lizards had already caused a change in the heaven and earth's origin energy. Gusts of wind rose within 1,000 li radius, and countless pillars of origin energy fell into the battle. Countless pillars of origin energy condensed and exploded in mid-air, illuminating the surroundings with dazzling light. However, all of this paled in comparison to the battle taking place several thousand li away. On the ground several thousand li away, Tempering Bones Xiao Hua had revealed his 10,000 zhang tall avatar. Although it was only 10,000 zhang tall, standing on the ground, his momentum pierced through heaven and earth, more impressive than the desolate continent's giant mountain peaks. Around Tempering Bones Xiaohua, there were several lizard-like beasts that were several thousand zhang in size, standing on demonic clouds as they attacked ferociously. These lizard-like beasts' bodies were covered in lightning and fire patterns. Between their attacks, not only were there surging lightning and blazing flames, but there were also endless thunderclaps. Especially these lizard-like beasts, and when they opened their mouths, their roars sounded like dragon roars. The space within several thousand li was under the control of these lizard-like beasts. Countless lightning bolts and blazing flames tore the void apart. Chaotic energy fluctuations rushed out from the void, rushing towards Tempering Bones Xiaohua like a tempest. Tempering Bones Xiaohua did not use any magic tools, he merely clenched his fists. As his fists danced in the air, the space within 100 zhang exploded, and everything within the space turned into nothingness. Perhaps the energy fluctuations could pass through the void, but when they landed on Tempering Bones Xiaohua's body, they could only extinguish a small amount of light. However, there were too many energy fluctuations. At this time, Tempering Bones Xiaohua's body was already mottled with light. Many parts of his body were torn apart by the lizard-like beasts, revealing his green body. Seeing that Tempering Bones Xiaohua's fist had missed, a huge lizard-like beast pounced over and bit his arm. Tempering Bones Xiaohua's wrist hooked and hit the lizard's chin in a split second. The lizard's body was flipped over, and the lizard's tail swept across Tempering Bones Xiaohua's waist with a paw. Tempering Bones Xiaohua's body was unstable, and he staggered slightly. Beside him was a hill that was several hundred zhang tall. This hill in the eyes of ordinary people was just a pellet in Tempering Bones Xiaohua's eyes. With a sweep of his left foot, he broke the hill with a boom, and the entire hill flew up. Tempering Bones Xiaohua's left foot did not stop, and it bounced smoothly like flowing water. Woo! With a piercing wind, the hill flew and hit the lizard that attacked Tempering Bones Xiaohua just now. In the end, that lizard was no match for Tempering Bones Xiaohua. The hill hit the lizard's abdomen with a boom. Although the several hundred zhang tall hill turned into powder under the lightning of the lizard's abdomen, Tempering Bones Xiaohua's strength still pierced deeply into the lizard's abdomen. The dark golden abdomen split open with a bloody scar that was several hundred zhang long, and the lizard let out a mournful wail like a dragon's roar. Seeing that several huge lizards were about to attack at the same time, a cold voice sounded between heaven and earth. A huge, suffocating aura came from afar. Then, light and shadow distorted, and Xiaohua's figure appeared in the sky along with a stream of light. Master, be careful. Xiaohua's figure had yet to completely reveal itself when Jiang Hong immediately sent a sound transmission to the group of lizards. Unfortunately, before she could finish speaking, several lizards opened their mouths and roared, actually shaking Jiang Hong's sound transmission and scattering it. At this moment, the vines on the ground suddenly moved. Shua! The vines were 100 times fiercer than the lizards. They flew up from the ground and headed toward the space where Xiaohua was. Chapter 42:21. Not only that, as the rattan vines shook, the ground shook as well. In places where Xiaohua's gaze could not reach, more rattan vines emerged from the ground. The originally flat plains were now covered in deep ravines, and the rattan vines in these ravines soared to the sky, leaving behind several hundred zhang deep pits. The rattan vines covered an area of 10,000 li, each of them resembling a ferocious horned dragon, emitting a strange energy fluctuation that completely sealed off the space. Not only was the heaven and earth origin energy unable to enter, even sunlight was unable to pass through. These tens of thousands of rattan vines exuded killing intent, and at the end of this killing intent was Xiaohua. Xiaohua sneered. As soon as he saw Lu Yi and the others being besieged by the lizards, he had already understood. Yuanya might not be so scheming, but people like Lu Yi and Wang Bianfei would immediately think of countermeasures when they saw the slightest disturbance. With so many lizards besieging them, as long as they saw that the situation was not good, they would definitely escape first and send a message to him. Since they could not send a message, then they must have been trapped before they could send a message. Since that was the case, other than the lizards, the only thing that could trap them was the rattan vines on the ground. Since Xiaohua dared to show himself, he had already paid attention to the rattan vines and had come up with a countermeasure. While Xiaohua was sneering, he had already released his divine sense. Wang Bianfei and the others could already hear Xiaohua's voice in their ears. Don't resist, Master will send you back to Shenhua mainland first. Therefore, before the rattan vines could reach them, the group of Fortune Gate disciples surrounded by lizards had already disappeared. However, to Xiaohua's surprise, there were actually some lizards that were able to attack his mind when his mind passed by. Just as the Fortune Gate disciples disappeared, the rattan vines had already reached them. Some lizards were unable to dodge in time and were caught by the rattan vines. The lizards' bodies glowed brightly as they resisted the rattan vines' attacks, but the rattan vines twisted in a strange way, firmly entangling the lizards. As the rattan vines streaked across the sky, a powerful force was generated. Although the lizards' bodies were unharmed on the surface, the insides of their bodies were unable to withstand the rattan vines' force. Their bodies were forcefully twisted, and large chunks of flesh and blood flowed out from the lizards' bodies. Amidst a series of dragon roars, the lizards were ground to death by the rattan vines. The black jade qilin didn't care about the lizard siege, but when it saw how powerful the rattan was, the lizards that were besieging it scattered. Flames immediately surged around its body, and it opened its mouth, spitting a scarlet flame at the rattan that was pouncing at it. At the same time, its two front legs danced, and several sharp rays of light flashed, slashing at the rattan that was sharper than flying swords. Woo! When the flames landed on the rattan vines, the cloud patterns on the rattan vines flickered, and strands of lightning appeared, extinguishing the flames in an instant. Moreover, the lightning did not slow down, and continued to attack the black jade qilin's attack. Clang clang clang. When the lightning struck the black jade qilin's attack, it actually emitted a metallic clanging sound. The black jade qilin's attack only lasted for a few breaths before it was extinguished. However, as the lightning was extinguished, the rattan vine's force had already sealed the space around the black jade qilin. Seeing that it was no match for the rattan vines, the black jade qilin's body surged again, forming a ring that expanded outward. A void passage was quickly formed within this ring of light. Boom! Just as joy appeared in the black jade qilin's eyes and it was about to jump into the void passage, a rattan suddenly stretched out from the void. When the rattan pierced into the void passage, the entire rattan coiled around the passage. Under the huge force, the void passage shook violently with a rumble and suddenly collapsed. The collapse of the passage caused the black jade qilin to be blown away, and the ring of light was also scattered. At this moment, another rattan strangely appeared and hit the black jade qilin's back. Layers of lightning and flames appeared on the black jade qilin's back to block the rattan, but the rattan coiled around the black jade qilin and was about to trap the black jade qilin. The black jade qilin turned pale with fright. It naturally knew that if it fell into this trap, it would not be any better than the lizards. Almost without hesitation, the black jade qilin transmitted its voice. Spiritual Master, save me. Xiaohua originally wanted to take the black jade qilin, Lu Yi, and the others into Shenhua continent, but when he saw the black jade qilin using its divine ability to resist, he could not take it in. Therefore, his consciousness stopped near the black jade qilin. After seeing the black jade qilin speak and transmit its voice to not resist, his consciousness swept towards the black jade qilin and took it into Shenhua continent as well. Just as Xiaohua took the black jade qilin, the rattan came across the sky. This rattan was really strange. Not only did it sweep across the sky and kill another lizard around the black jade qilin, but it also flashed with lightning-like brilliance and cut off Xiaohua's consciousness. Xiaohua was shocked and rubbed his hands. Boom! Tens of thousands of thunderbolts were like raging tides. They appeared in the void within 1,000 miles and roared as they drowned the rattan. However, where the lightning surged, the rattan within 1,000 miles was hit until it trembled violently. The cloud patterns on it quickly dimmed as if it was in pain from being hit. The rattan shrank and hid in the void. Of course, it only hid in the void and was not destroyed. Even after the lightning within 1,000 miles was annihilated, the rattan once again rushed out. Roar! Not far from Xiaohua, the situation of the bone-honing Xiaohua was not good. He was originally fighting with the giant lizard on the ground. The rattan had already wrapped around his bare feet. The bone-honing Xiaohua dodged the rattan while fighting with the giant lizard. What surprised him was that the giant lizard was not afraid of the rattan. The rattan also avoided the lizard. Therefore, when Xiaohua just took the black jade qilin, the rattan had already wrapped around Xiaohua from all directions. This rattan was very difficult to fight. Not only was the surface tough, even harder to break than the lizard, the rattan's strength was also swift and violent. When it waved, it sealed the entire space. What gave the bone-honing Xiaohua the most headache was that the rattan was extremely soft and flexible, like a python. Although the bone-honing Xiaohua tried his best to dodge, the rattan still wrapped around his waist, hands, and arms. Big head and no brain. Seeing that the bone-honing Xiaohua was entangled by the rattan, Xiaohua smiled bitterly and scolded, "Can't you take back your avatar? With such a big body, other than showing off, what else can it do? Isn't it just being entangled by others?" Although Xiaohua was angry at the bone-honing Xiaohua's slowness, when he saw that the bone-honing Xiaohua could not break the rattan with a wave of his arm, he naturally could not ignore it. He raised his hand and a golden light flashed. The soaring dragon scissors appeared out of thin air, turning into a golden dragon and chopping at the rattan, entangling the bone-honing Xiaohua. Ka-ka! The soaring dragon scissors was extremely fast and nimble. It dodged the rattan that filled the sky and landed on the rattan around Xiaohua's body. The sound of metal rang in an instant, and several feet deep cracks immediately appeared on the dozens of rattan. Of course, it was only these few feet of cracks. The soaring dragon scissors could not completely cut the rattan. Hiss! Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. He knew that this rattan was a foreign object from the desolate continent and was not easy to cut. However, he still did not expect that this rattan was so tough that even his sharpest magic treasure, the soaring dragon shears, could not cut it. However, with the help of the soaring dragon scissors, the bone-honing Xiaohua waved his hands rapidly. As if he had 3 heads and 6 arms, he broke the rattan, entangling him. The avatar hurriedly shrank. Just as the bone-honing Xiaohua's figure moved, the lizard's huge tail fell from the rattan shadow. The bone-honing Xiaohua was caught off guard and hit the left side of his ribs. Boom! With a loud sound, the bone-honing Xiaohua's left side produced thunder and fire, extinguishing the golden light protecting Xiaohua's body. The huge force even threw him into the trap of the rattan. At this time, Xiaohua was also surrounded by dozens of rattan. For the time being, he could not find an effective way to stop the rattan. He could only urge the soaring dragon scissors to dance in the air and block the attacking rattan. Then, he relied on the Imperial Thunder technique to cut the rattan. Seeing that the bone-honing Xiaohua was once again thrown into the rattan, Xiaohua was shocked and cursed, "Damn it!" His mind hurriedly urged, wanting to put the bone-honing Xiaohua into the space. Unfortunately, the rattan was really fierce. It sealed the entire space. When Xiaohua's mind was released, it was immediately blocked by the rattan. Not only could it not touch the bone-honing Xiaohua, it was also swallowed by the cloud patterns of the rattan. Xiaohua's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand and waved. The Kunlun mirror appeared in his hand. Under the urging of his magic power, the Kunlun mirror produced a 5-colored beam of light. The beam of light fell into the air and gave birth to a fist-sized vortex. The vortex rapidly expanded and tore the void apart. The beam of light fell into the void and disappeared. Looking at the space around the bone-honing Xiaohua, there were wave-like ripples. A void passage was about to appear. Boom! Within the vortex, several rattan appeared and frantically stabbed into the void passage. However, the 5-colored brilliance of the Kunlun mirror blocked the rattan. The void passage steadily took shape in the void, swoosh. Just as a similar vortex appeared above the bone-honing Xiaohua's head, the sound of flowing water suddenly came from the top of Xiaohua's head. Xiaohua was slightly stunned and hastily raised his head. He saw a pitch-black crack appear in the void. The sound from the crack was like the sound of flowing spring water. At the same time, a vast and terrifying aura that made Xiaohua's body tremble suddenly appeared along with the sound of flowing spring water. Xiaohua almost didn't hesitate and slapped his head. Woo! 5-colored true energy mixed with the power of starlight gushed out. A huge executioner's hand condensed from 50 true energies grabbed at the aura. But in the void crack, a dozen rattan flashed with golden light and emitted a terrifying aura. It was like a huge hand grabbing down. It collided with Xiaohua's executioner's hand. Boom! Qi waves surged into the sky. Xiaohua's executioner's hand was grabbed by the huge rattan hand and turned into 5-colored true energy that drifted in the air within 1,000 li. This huge wave of qi not only swayed the light protecting Xiaohua's body, but also sent the dozens of rattan flying. Chapter 42-22. Suffering the backlash of the rattan's power, the true qi in Xiaohua's dantian churned violently. The flying sword that was about to condense and attack also stopped in the middle of the true qi. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. Lightning flashed around his body as he prepared to retreat. At this time, the dozen or so rattan once again imprisoned the space within 100 li. The lightning that Xiaohua had just activated was instantly annihilated. Even the domain power activated by magic power was defeated. The rattan was even more unexpected to Xiaohua. It ignored the space and fell towards the Kunlun mirror. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Seeing the Kunlun mirror's 5-colored light beam being crushed by the golden rattan and the void passage that rescued bone-honing Xiaohua was also annihilated in the void, Xiaohua suddenly woke up and cursed angrily. It turns out that all this trap was just to seize this Xiao's Kunlun mirror. Xiaohua naturally wouldn't let the rattan succeed. His divine sense hurriedly urged the Kunlun mirror to retrieve it. However, the space was already imprisoned by the rattan. This imprisonment was so tight that it was comparable to a seal. Xiaohua's domain power couldn't be used. How could his divine sense contact the Kunlun mirror? Seeing the Kunlun mirror's brilliance disappear, it slightly flipped and was about to fall into the rattan's hands. At this critical moment, Xiaohua coldly snorted. His hands suddenly formed seals and the clear water bottle appeared in his hands. Swish! With the sound of flowing water, the clear water was like a sword. A water light like a shadow streaked across the sky and chopped at the dozen or so golden rattan. Whoosh! A subtle sound was almost inaudible in the air exploding. However, following this almost negligible sound, the dozen or so golden rattan were actually cut off. Lightning and fire poured out from the cut rattan. Swish, 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 swish. The dozen or so golden rattan seemed to be in pain and rapidly trembled. This trembling shook the world. At the same time, the rattan within 10,000 li also began to tremble. The sealed space showed signs of collapsing. Withdraw! Seeing a flaw in the rattan, Xiaohua was overjoyed. With a sweep of his mind, the Kunlun mirror in the air immediately disappeared. At the same time, the soaring dragon shears rushed out and once again chopped the rattan around Xiaohua's legs. Oh! The bone-honing Xiaohua roared angrily and broke the vines around his legs. Then he spat out a 4-colored light beam from his mouth and sent another lizard flying. His body shrank again. Seeing that his guess was right, Xiaohua sneered. His hands formed a seal again, and the Buddhist seal was mixed with the sword controlling technique. Swish swish. Hundreds of small swords rushed out from the clear water bottle. These small swords flew out silently and pierced into the pitch-black crack above Xiaohua's head. Boom. Strange noises were produced in the void, as if the void was exploding and collapsing. The space near the pitch-black crack began to ripple rapidly, and a strange phenomenon of wind and thunder appeared. Immediately after, the dozen golden vines retreated into the void crack. The pitch-black crack also disappeared. As the earth trembled, The vines within 5,000 kilometers also slowly retreated into the ground. The lizards seemed to be puzzled when the vines retreated. The lizards besieging the bone-honing Xiao Hua pounced on him again. Even the hundreds of lizards that were hiding at the side when the vines were flying also attacked Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua defeated the vines with the help of the innate true water. How could he dare to stay here for long? At the same time, he used the soaring dragon shears to force back several lizards and put away the bone-honing Xiao Hua. His body surged with lightning and he had already forced his way out of the lizard's encirclement. When he got out of the lizard's encirclement, Xiao Hua immediately teleported and disappeared without caring about the direction. However, although Xiao Hua's figure was fast, in the sky, a huge eye faintly appeared. It faintly swept across the place where Xiao Hua disappeared, and then strangely disappeared again. Xiao Hua flew for several hours. From time to time, there were powerful wills and auras on the entire continent, blocking Xiao Hua's flight path. Xiao Hua didn't dare to get too close to these auras. He avoided them and turned around. When a mysterious ice plateau appeared in the distance, Xiao Hua released his divine sense and saw that there weren't any powerful characters nearby. Only then did he slowly fly down. After landing, Xiao Hua first took out the ink jade qilin and asked, "This old man wants to ask you, what is that vine? Why is it so powerful?" The ink jade qilin smiled bitterly and said, "Master, this vine is a kind of ancient variant called the profound heaven thunder vine. It was born from the essence of thunder and usually swallows lightning. According to this little one's knowledge, this profound heaven thunder vine has never taken the initiative to attack unless other ancient variant beasts provoke it. To tell you the truth, today is the first time this little one has seen the profound heaven thunder vine show its power." "Then what about the lizards?" Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said with a frown. "A lizard is a lizard." The ink jade qilin replied, "They can't be considered powerful, but because they often appear in groups, we generally don't like to provoke them. Back then, this little one and the golden toad even worked together to kill 4 lizards." Xiao Hua nodded. "Do you think this profound heaven thunder vine is driven by other ancient variant beasts?" "Impossible." The ink jade qilin immediately shook its head. "This little one has never heard of any ancient variant beast that can drive the profound heaven thunder vine. How many variants like the profound heaven thunder vine can there be on the continent?" Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance, asking thoughtfully. The ink jade qilin hesitated and replied, "Master, this little one usually lives in an area of several million li. No matter how far it is, I've only heard about it from other ancient variant beasts. I've never been there. I'm afraid no one knows how big the continent is. Who knows how many powerful variants there are on the continent?" "Hee." Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "In that case, are you willing to follow this old man to the depths of the continent to take a look?" The ink jade qilin's eyes lit up and said happily, "If Master has such thoughts, this little one will definitely follow Master. This little one has always wanted to go to other places to take a look, but unfortunately, this little one's strength is really not enough, so I don't dare to go far from here." You go to the Kunlun paradise and wait for a while. After this old man has arranged everything, we'll go and take a look together," Xiao Hua said and took out the Kunlun mirror. The eyeball looked around and saw that there was nothing unusual, so he put the ink jade qilin into it. After putting away the ink jade qilin, Xiao Hua immediately took Lu Yi out. Lu Yi saw Xiao Hua's face was not good and hurriedly bowed. "Disciple greets Master." Xiao Hua stared at Lu Yi and did not speak, making Lu Yi's hair stand. "Master Fu?" Lu Yi really did not understand and asked tentatively, "Is there something you want to ask this disciple?" Xiao Hua nodded. "Master wants to ask you, is there anything you are hiding from me?" "Hiding?" Lu Yi was stunned. Obviously, he didn't know what Xiao Hua was talking about. He thought for a while and said with a smile, "This disciple really has nothing to hide from Master. If Master wants to know something, can you give me some hints?" Seeing that Lu Yi's expression did not seem to be fake, Xiao Hua asked, "Think about it again. Did you see anything strange after arriving here?" "See." Hearing Xiao Hua's words, Lu Yi thought of the ambush just now. How could someone as smart as Lu Yi not know that he had made a big mistake? He sucked in a breath of cold air and fell to his knees in front of Xiao Hua with a plop and said, "Master, this disciple was wrong." AI. Xiao Hua did not help Lu Yi up and sighed, "Do you know where you were wrong?" This disciple took things for granted. Lu Yi's face was filled with guilt as he answered, "When this disciple left the space that day, this disciple had a vague feeling that something was spying on my Fortune Gates disciples. However, this feeling was fleeting, and when this disciple checked again, it was gone, so this disciple did not pay much attention to it. After that, although there were some scattered feelings, this disciple was not sure. Later, this disciple discussed with Jiang Hong, and Jiang Hong felt that Master's magic power is incomparable. Whatever this disciple knows, Master must also know. Moreover, at that time, Master was busy assigning tasks to disciples, so this disciple, Confucian cultivators have a saying, "What you know is what you know, what you don't know is what you know." Xiao Hua said earnestly, "There are many things that cannot be taken for granted. You can't rely on your own subjective assumptions and believe whatever you think is the truth. Didn't Master tell you clearly when I accepted you into the Fortune Gate? Everyone has their own cultivation path, and everyone has their own unique talent. This is something that others do not have. You may be able to sense this kind of warning, but Master may not be able to. If you had said it earlier, perhaps those Fortune Gates disciples who died in the lizard's mouth would not have to stay in their hometown." Lu Yi's eyes were brimming with tears as he kowtowed, "This disciple understands, this is all this disciple's fault." AI, it may not be all your fault. Xiao Hua helped Lu Yi up. Master was too careless, not understanding the situation on the desolate mainland, and rashly sending Fortune Gates disciples to the desolate mainland to teach. "Master," Lu Yi hurriedly said, "Master is not wrong. This disciple likes to help the desolate mainland's variant beasts, and this disciple knows that all Fortune Gates disciples also like to do this. Although we have encountered many difficulties along the way, and lost some disciples, these disciples did not have any complaints. They felt that everything they had sacrificed was worth it." "That's right." Xiao Hua raised his head, looking at the floating clouds in the sky. "Your thoughts are very correct. Giving spiritual herbs to others, leaving a lingering fragrance in your hands, as long as you can help others, your heart will be at peace. This time, the virtue of teaching on the desolate mainland is not only for your Confucian martial uncle, but also for my Fortune Gates disciples. This will definitely play a very important role in your future cultivation. The heavens are kind, and will not let virtuous people like you suffer losses." Chapter 42-23. Disciple understands Master's painstaking efforts, so we gladly agreed. Lu Yi bit his lower lip and nodded. "And let's not talk about this." Xiao Hua asked, "Let's talk about your warning signs." "Yes, Master understands." Lu Yi answered, "Other than when disciple first arrived at Shenhua mainland, I sensed something, but I have never encountered it again." At this point, Lu Yi hurriedly added, "Oh, about 10 days ago, I came with the Black Jade Qilin to look for Yuanya and Master Quenching Bones. I seem to have this feeling again, but this feeling is too faint, I dare not be sure." In other words, Xiao Hua pinched his chin, frowning as he said, "This prying consciousness is not targeting you. It's targeting other people, which is why you are not sure. And it's definitely not targeting disciple, otherwise disciple would have sensed it. But it's definitely targeting Fortune Gate disciples, otherwise disciple would not have sensed it." Lu Yi nodded affirmatively. Disciple even feels that it's targeting Martial Uncle Yuanya. Martial Uncle Yuanya was always close to disciple. Martial Uncle Yuanya? Xiao Hua asked curiously, "If it's targeting him, when your Martial Uncle Tempered Bones went to rescue Martial Uncle Yuanya, wouldn't that prying consciousness have many opportunities?" But the first time disciple sensed it, Martial Uncle Tempered Bones was not by disciple's side. Lu Yi shook his head and said, "Perhaps that consciousness's target is Master. In the beginning, Master was by disciple's side, and disciple sensed that consciousness spying on Master. And this time, the consciousness spied on us in order to set up a trap for Master to fall into. But why is that consciousness spying on Master? What's its goal? That consciousness's goal is the Kunlun mirror. Xiaohua answered, Master revealed the Kunlun mirror on the desolate mainland, so that consciousness might be interested in the Kunlun mirror, right? Hearing this, Lu Yi's face paled. He did not know about the secret of space and thought that Shenhua mainland was inside the Kunlun paradise. He hurriedly said, Then Master must be careful. Our Fortune Gate disciples are all inside the Kunlun mirror. Master naturally knows this, you can rest assured. Xiaohua chuckled. I'm afraid it's because that consciousness is spying on Master, wanting to obtain the Kunlun mirror, and you, as a Fortune Gate disciple. At this point, Xiaohua suddenly froze. It was very simple. Lu Yi wasn't in the Kunlun mirror at all. Even if that consciousness wanted to seize the Kunlun mirror, it had nothing to do with Lu Yi. Lu Yi shouldn't have sensed that consciousness is prying. Could it be that consciousness wants to exterminate all Fortune Gate disciples? Xiaohua was baffled. But if that's the case, this Xiao should be terrified. Could it be that this Xiao's karma law formula didn't take the threat of this consciousness seriously? That's not right either. That Rotten is obviously a trap. To be able to control the Rotten, what kind of almighty being is that? How could this Xiao possibly be a match for him? Xiaohua scratched his head when he saw that the situation was getting more and more confusing. He looked at Lu Yi, who was also confused, and said with a smile, Forget it, we don't know anyone except the Black Jade Qilin in this great desolate continent. It's useless to think about it any further. Why don't we deal with all changes by sticking to the status quo? Yes, Master is right. Lu Yi nodded, then suggested, Why don't this disciple follow Master? Forget it. Xiaohua laughed. Master didn't notice it before, but now that Master knows, do you think Master won't notice it? You'd better return to Shenhua continent. Disciple will follow Master's arrangement. Lu Yi didn't dare to say anything else and let Xiaohua put him into his space. His granny, something strange. Xiaohua grumbled as he looked around. He wanted to use his karma law formula to investigate, but thinking that there was a powerful enemy beside him, how could Xiaohua dare to use his karma law formula casually? Fellow Taoist. At this time, green-robed Xiaohua's voice sounded, Your disciple is looking for you. My disciple? Xiaohua answered casually, then came to a realization and said, Fellow Taoist green-robe, come out and talk. Oh? What's the matter? Green-robed Xiaohua flew out from Xiaohua's dantian and asked curiously, Did fellow Taoist just return to Shenhua continent? Xiaohua asked with a faint smile. Green-robed Xiaohua was surprised and answered, Yes. I just went back to check on the Fortune Gate's disciples. How did you enter the space? Xiaohua asked. How did I enter? Green-robed Xiaohua was puzzled. Just like that? Green-robed Xiaohua's figure flickered and disappeared, but reappeared a moment later. When can fellow Taoist enter and exit the space freely? Xiaohua asked. Green-robed Xiaohua scratched his head and thought for a moment, then answered with uncertainty, It seems, before the heavenly demon's ambush? After. I can't remember clearly, I don't know when I can enter and exit the space freely. Then. Xiaohua nodded. Green-robed Xiaohua had stayed in the space for the longest time, so it was normal that he could enter and exit the space the earliest. Since green-robed Xiaohua was like that, then Phoenix Body Xiaohua, Bone Tempering Xiaohua, and other clones would be able to enter and exit the space freely sooner or later. How can you enter the space? Xiaohua thought of something and asked. The earliest is from my dantian. Green-robed Xiaohua didn't hesitate and immediately answered, Right now, I can enter within 100 zhang from fellow Taoist. Good. Xiaohua smiled and said, It seems that after a long time, fellow Taoist will be able to enter the space at any time from thousands of li away. It should be possible. Green-robed Xiaohua nodded and answered. He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with this, because he had always been in the space since he had intelligence. In his impression, the space was his home, so wasn't it normal for him to be able to enter and exit the space? Which disciple is looking for I? Xiaohua didn't point it out and asked with a smile. Wang Bianfei? Green-robed Xiaohua rolled his eyes and replied, this little guy has been looking a bit strange these days, he's been acting mysteriously. Hee. Xiaohua understood and asked, did you teach him that secret sound transmission technique? Green-robed Xiaohua nodded, that thing is quite difficult to comprehend, I had some gains and wanted to find someone to try it out. Wang Bianfei is quite suitable, so I told him a bit. Why do you think he's suitable? Xiaohua asked curiously. Green-robed Xiaohua blinked his eyes and said with a smile, when I entered the space, Wang Bianfei was right in front of I, so I naturally felt that he was suitable? AI, it's fate. Xiaohua was helpless and could only use these 2 words to sum it up. Xiaohua pulled Wang Bianfei out of the space and asked, Wang Bianfei, did you get any information from the Phoenix hairpin? Master? Wang Bianfei replied somewhat anxiously, that female cultivator isn't inside the Phoenix hairpin, she's trapped somewhere in the great desolate continent. The Phoenix hairpin contains information about that place. Give me the Phoenix hairpin, Xiaohua said with a stretch of his hand. Yes, master. Wang Bianfei obediently gave the Phoenix hairpin to Xiaohua. Xiaohua probed for a moment, but still couldn't get anything from it, so he returned the Phoenix hairpin to Wang Bianfei and asked, where is that place? Do you know how to get there? Tongtan Peak. Wang Bianfei replied, that place is millions of li northeast of Tongtian Peak, there's an extremely powerful forbidden technique. Tongtian Peak? Xiaohua was shocked. If Wang Bianfei said the path to that place, Xiaohua would suspect that there was something wrong with the Phoenix hairpin. After all, that female cultivator couldn't have known where the Phoenix hairpin would end up, she couldn't have said the specific path in advance. If other places were mentioned, Xiaohua might not believe it, but when it came to the names of places in the great desolate continent, this Tongtian Peak was the first to bear the brunt. After all, he had a crystal stone, and it also had Tongtian Peak written on it. It seems that Tongtian Peak is very famous. Xiaohua sighed. Moreover, it's also fated with us. We have no choice but to go to Tongtian Peak. Wang Bianfei was somewhat puzzled. He didn't know what Xiaohua meant, but he still bit his lips, bowed and said, Disciple doesn't dare to have extravagant hopes of forming a relationship with the so-called female immortal. However, since Disciple obtained this Phoenix hairpin and also received a sound transmission from that female, Disciple can't ignore it. I ask for Master's help. Hee. Xiaohua laughed and said, Wang Bianfei, don't worry, Fujiwen's karma is shouldered by Master alone, so your karma is also shouldered by Master. Actually, while accomplishing your karma, Master also obtained quite a bit. Master also has some expectations, don't know what kind of surprise this Tongtian Peak can bring to Master. Yes, Master. Wang Bianfei responded and stood at the side. Xiaohua raised his hand and patted the Kunlun mirror, taking out the ink jade qilin from the space, and said with a smile, Let's go, you follow me to the depths of the great desolate continent, and also see where Tongtian Peak is. What? Master wants to go to Tongtian Peak? The ink jade qilin's expression changed greatly. Tongtian Peak is going, but it might not be within 100 years. Xiaohua said with a smile. Moreover, I also don't dare to have extravagant hopes of that so-called divine artifact. You can rest assured. That's good. The ink jade qilin nodded. This little one grew up in the great desolate continent and has never heard of Tongtian Peak's name. It must be a dangerous place. It's best if we don't go and join in the fun. Master. Wang Bianfei said from the side. Disciple's Phoenix hairpin seems to be able to guide the way, but Disciple doesn't know how to activate it. Don't think about it. Xiaohua waved his hand. If that thing doesn't have the divine ability of the immortal world, it's extremely difficult to activate. You and the Phoenix hairpin are fated, otherwise, you won't even be able to see the primordial spirit projection inside. Yes. Hearing this, Wang Bianfei carefully hid the Phoenix hairpin close to his body. Xiaohua said again, Moreover, the Phoenix hairpin has been wandering in the great desolate continent for who knows how many years, we don't need to be too anxious. First, we should focus on gaining experience and seeing the great desolate continent. If nothing unexpected happens, we will definitely be able to find Tongtian Peak on the way. I will listen to Master's arrangement. Wang Bianfei naturally didn't have any objections. Immediately, Xiaohua put the green-robed Xiaohua and Wang Bianfei into the space, and himself sat on the back of the ink jade qilin, heading towards the depths of the great desolate continent. Chapter 42-24. The untainted land seemed to be boundless. It was far larger than what Xiaohua could see from the time turbulence. In the past few decades, Xiaohua had traveled to many places with the black jade qilin. He had seen many secret places in the untainted land and searched for many exotic flowers and herbs. Not to mention that Xiaohua couldn't identify these exotic flowers and herbs, he didn't even dare to casually touch the secret places in the untainted land. Because when encountering such a place, there would be an extremely dangerous aura coming from the secret land. Without waiting for Xiaohua to react, the ink jade qilin first retreated. Born in the wilderness, the ink jade qilin had an innate instinct to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. The ink jade qilin knew where it could go and where it couldn't. Encountering this kind of situation, Xiaohua generally didn't insist. He first let the ink jade qilin stay in place, and he himself probed deeper. However, the results were mostly the same. The ink jade qilin couldn't go deep into these secret lands, and Xiaohua also couldn't go deep. Often, under the pressure of that dangerous aura, Xiaohua had to give up. Although Xiaohua was clear that this kind of dangerous aura was the danger of the secret land itself, and there might not be any powerful opponents inside, his current strength was only around the 9th level of essence energy. Before the wilderness secret land, he couldn't even be considered an ant. Of course, merely probing wasn't useless. Xiaohua sharpened his mind and broadened his horizons. This was something that the Dawn Rain continent didn't have in the 3 continents. However, the decades of experience made Xiaohua more and more puzzled. Because he encountered many dangers, but most of them were from the secret land itself. They were naturally formed by heaven and earth, and he hadn't seen too many beasts in the wilderness. Even if there were beasts, they weren't much stronger than Xiaohua's strength. Strange existences like the mysterious sky thundervine were few and far between. This was too different from what Xiaohua thought, and it was also too different from what the ink jade qilin knew. Even the ink jade qilin was somewhat regretful. It should have come out earlier to take a look, maybe it already had some opportunity. While Xiaohua was puzzled, he also kept paying attention to the water element energy of heaven and earth. It wasn't out of his expectations. Wherever Xiaohua went, the water element energy of heaven and earth was scarce. Except for a few mysterious ice, there were almost no water droplets, let alone rivers and lakes. Of course, these places were not suitable for the human race to live in. Perhaps, this great desolate continent is a fragment? The green-robed Xiaohua's thoughts were the most active. He was the first to speak to Xiaohua. At this time, Xiaohua had just left a secret area. The back of his Taoist robe still had a hole in it. He had been injured by a dangerous situation in the secret area. Xiaohua took a medicinal pill and urged his magic power to repair his body. When some lightning surged on his back, he said, "I'm afraid that's the case. Otherwise, why was there only water element among the 5 elements in the world? Also, there are very few prehistoric beasts on this continent." No. The green-robed Xiaohua said, "There are many low-level primordial mutant beasts, and they can be found everywhere. However, there are too few mutant beasts with extraordinary strength. The fact that there aren't too many powerful beasts means that the primeval continent isn't complete." Xiaohua frowned and said, "This also explains the time turbulence that we saw before we entered the primeval continent. It's not necessarily true that there aren't any powerful exotic beasts. Perhaps they're hiding behind these dangerous secret plains? It's just that we haven't seen them yet." The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua had already come out of seclusion a few years ago. At this time, he said, "Besides, the primeval continent is really too big. We haven't been to many places in the past few decades. If we only use what we saw in these places to generalize about the entire primeval continent, then we're blinded by a single leaf. Hee, scholarly fellow immortal has a lot of idioms. Dragon bloodline, Xiao Hua said with a smile. No wonder the human race can prosper in the 3 continents, but my dragon race can't. It's because my dragon race has never attached importance to education. Tiaskadise, fellow Taoists, take a look. The power of education is crazier than any other power. We've been traveling the primeval continent for several decades and have also witnessed the education of the primeval continent for several decades. Since these low-level primeval mutant beasts have already been enlightened, I presume that it won't be long before experts that even we have to look up to appear, right? Fellow Taoist dragon bloodline, there's no need to envy the human race. The scholarly cultivator Xiao Hua said with a smile. The dragon race is born to be strong. This is something that the human race can't compare to. This kind of education is useful for low-level primeval mutant beasts, but it's useless for high-level ones. You might as well ask fellow Taoist Phoenix Body whether or not he needs education. That's right. Phoenix Body Xiao Hua also said, every race has its own reason for reproduction. If they're all the same, this primeval continent is unavoidably too boring. Then what about I? Bone-honing Xiao Hua's bell-like voice sounded from within his body. I extremely like the aura of this primeval continent, but why can't I's strength improve? Xiao Huan naturally knew that bone-honing Xiao Hua was besieged by those lizards and then defeated by the profound sky thundervine. He had always been brooding in his heart. He answered with a smile, although those primeval mutant beasts have innate divine abilities, their potential is limited, and their achievements are even more limited. Fellow Taoists' current divine abilities are limited, but they're all from your own cultivation. Each step is very solid, and your future achievements are limitless. This is something that other primeval mutant beasts can't even envy. Very good, very good. Bone-honing Xiao Hua didn't think much, and after hearing Xiao Hua's consolation, he was very happy. However, when Phoenix Body Xiao Hua heard this, the corners of his mouth secretly revealed an indescribable smile. Although this kind of consolation couldn't be considered as self-deception, it wasn't a universal truth. Phoenix Body Xiao Hua didn't think that an ordinary hen could cultivate to his level. Several decades. After all, it's still a short time. It's difficult for us to see the entire primeval continent clearly. Xiao Hua raised his head and looked at the distant dawn. The previously blurry starry sky was increasingly expanding, as if there was a blurry mirror covering that place. He reminded in a low voice, however, there's not much time left for us to wait. Although this Xiao doesn't know what that warning sign is, but this warning sign is far stronger than before. At this point, Xiao Hua asked again, fellow Taoist soul cultivator, is there... Without waiting for Xiao Hua to finish speaking, soul cultivator Xiao Hua said somewhat unhappily, fellow Taoist, you've already asked this over 10,000 times, right? If there's any unusual movement, presumably you'll know, so why do you have to ask? Alas. Xiao Hua sighed. This Xiao is also somewhat helpless. If it weren't for this indescribable warning sign, we could freely cultivate in this primeval continent. It wouldn't matter if we returned to the hidden immortal continent or not, Master. At this moment, the ink jade Qilin beneath Xiao Hua sent a voice transmission. There seems to be some unusual movement tens of thousands of miles ahead. This little one can't see clearly, but that aura is piercingly cold. This little one doesn't dare to move forward. Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. Previously, when they encountered dangerous places in the primeval continent, the ink jade Qilin would also warn him, but it wasn't so serious. Generally, it would only speak when it was right in front of him. It had never warned him in advance from tens of thousands of miles away like this. However, when Xiao Hua released his divine sense and saw everything in the distance, his brows raised again, and he said curiously, what's going on? Could it be that there are primeval beasts fighting here? Then, Xiao Hua put the ink jade Qilin into the space, and his figure turned into the wind and flew towards the distance. This was a place that was tens of thousands of miles in size, and this place was completely different from the primeval continent that Xiao Hua had seen. Not only was the ground in this place 1,000 feet deep, but there were also numerous large and small cracks that cut the ground into countless small pieces at the depths of the pit. These cracks were similarly extremely deep, and one couldn't see the bottom at a glance, and they were filled with a kind of vicious aura. When Xiaohua flew to this place, a fierce wind was blowing, and the entire heaven and earth was covered by earthen yellow sand. When the fierce wind blew past the cracks on the ground, it emitted a shrill howl that wasn't inferior to the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves. Moreover, this shrill howl had already formed a kind of sound attack, and various kinds of fluctuations drifted in the air. Xiaohua fell into it, and only by urging the brilliance around his body could he barely resist it. Xiaohua's divine sense swept over, and when the fierce wind passed through the cracks on the ground, it formed a kind of very subtle wind blade. This wind blade cut Xiaohua's divine sense to the extreme, and it scared Xiaohua to hastily withdraw his divine sense. His figure didn't dare to stay here for too long, and he flew towards another direction. Xiaohua's figure had just landed when the hurricane expanded again, forcing Xiaohua to fly another 1,000 miles, and stand on a mountain peak. Only then was he able to avoid it. Xiaohua stood on top of a mountain rock, and lowered his head to look at the huge mountain rock. The rock that was commonly seen in the primeval continent was covered with deep lines, as if they were engraved. It must have been caused by the hurricane for many years. Looking at the chaotic flying sand and rocks in the distance again, it was like a huge restriction that sealed off this place for tens of thousands of miles. Xiaohua's heart unconsciously moved, and he thought to himself, "This Xiao has been to so many places, but I have never seen such a strange phenomenon in the primeval continent. This strange phenomenon is completely different from the dangerous place from before. Rather than saying it was natural, it's better to say it was man-made. Could it be that this is the immortal world's forbidden technique that Wang Bianfei mentioned?" Of course, the hurricane at this moment was too powerful, so Xiaohua didn't dare to let Wang Bianfei out of the space. Thus, he sat cross-legged on the mountain peak, slowly released his divine sense, and carefully sensed the havoc of the hurricane. Sure enough, in just a few breaths, the corner of Xiaohua's mouth revealed a smile. The hurricane here had already weakened, and the wind blades inside were no longer enough to cut through Xiaohua's divine sense. Moreover, within the wind blades, Xiaohua had already sensed a faint magic power fluctuation. Of course, this magic power fluctuation was different from what Xiaohua usually saw, and it was also different from the ruin's restrictions. It wasn't something that Xiaohua could comprehend and break with his current cultivation. However, this fluctuation gave Xiaohua a very faint and familiar feeling. Xiaohua was already sure that this was the Dao Sect's forbidden technique without a doubt. Thus, Xiaohua's spirit shook, and he hurriedly released his domain, enveloping the surrounding 10 miles. When the wind blades fell into this domain, their speed immediately slowed down, and the fluctuations within the wind blades also emitted a faint brilliance, beginning to resist Xiaohua's domain. This was not outside of Xiaohua's expectations. Under the wind blades, Xiaohua's domain quickly began to collapse, but Xiaohua was not alarmed, and instead was happy. While urging his magic power to maintain his domain, he carefully sensed the fluctuations of the forbidden technique. Chapter 42-25. Although Xiaohua couldn't figure out whether this forbidden technique was the immortal world's forbidden technique or the so-called primitive world's forbidden technique, it was rare for him to see it. It was also a subtle opportunity for him to comprehend the forbidden technique and come into contact with the immortal world's cultivation methods. This comprehension lasted for over a few months. Xiaohua's figure was originally seated cross-legged on the mountain, but once the forbidden technique and violent gales restrained slightly, he simply urged his figure to descend to the edge of the gales, and he allowed the forbidden technique to tear apart his domain piece by piece. In the end, when the gales weakened to a certain extent, Xiaohua simply withdrew his domain and allowed the forbidden technique to descend directly onto his body. And he was more like a falling flower in the wind, slowly drifting down with the storm. Good. When Xiaohua's feet landed on the collapsed ground, the hurricane in the entire forbidden technique completely disappeared, Even the whistling between the cracks in the ground was faintly inaudible. Xiaohua opened his eyes and praised. Confucian cultivators have a saying, pay attention to everything and learn. It's really like this. This Xiao didn't think that the forbidden technique of the immortal world could actually allow this Xiao to comprehend so much. As he spoke, Xiaohua's divine sense swept around, roughly looking around, then pulled Wang Bianfei out of the space. Greetings, master. Wang Bianfei first respectfully saluted, then swept the surroundings with his divine sense. He immediately understood Xiaohua's meaning and said with some surprise, Master, is this where the fairy is imprisoned? However, after a moment, he was bewildered and asked curiously, what about the forbidden technique of the immortal world? Hee. Xiaohua said with a smile, this place is already somewhat different from the sound transmission in the Phoenix hairpin. The forbidden technique of the immortal world may have already been destroyed. Previously, when I came here, the forbidden technique was still very powerful, even I didn't dare to approach it. But now, the forbidden technique has actually weakened and disappeared. I'm afraid the fairy has already escaped? When Wang Bianfei heard this, he couldn't help but feel somewhat disappointed. He looked around and said, That's the best. This is just my guess. The real situation may not necessarily be the case. Xiaohua said, maybe the fairy is still waiting for you somewhere. Disciple, take out the Phoenix hairpin and take a look. If there is any reaction, wouldn't it save you and me a lot of trouble? Yes, master. Wang Yifei hurriedly took out the Phoenix hairpin. Sure enough, without waiting for Wang Bianfei to activate any magic power, the Phoenix hairpin immediately emitted a fluctuation that was extremely similar to the one in the hurricane from before. Then, the entire Phoenix hairpin emitted a four-colored light. Within the light, the Phoenix hairpin gracefully took shape and flew towards the center of the sunken earth. Let's go! Xiaohua rolled up his big sleeves and followed behind Feng Chai with Wang Bianfei. The Phoenix hairpin flew for half an hour and directly rushed into a huge crack, flying towards the ground. However, after flying for half the time of a meal, the Phoenix hairpin pierced through the mountain rocks and directly hit the ground. Oh! Xiaohua's eyes lit up when he saw the Phoenix hairpin pierce through the mountain rocks that even the hurricane couldn't destroy. He knew that this Phoenix hairpin was definitely not an ordinary item. After he used the Earth Escape technique and followed the Phoenix hairpin underground for another 2 hours, his eyes lit up even more. A bottomless abyss appeared in front of him. Hiss hiss. The Phoenix hairpin entered the abyss, circled in the air for a moment, and then flew towards a large rock. While flying, the Phoenix hairpin also produced a strange sound, as if it was crying in disappointment. Boom! The Phoenix hairpin fell into the large rock, and the large rock immediately emitted a resplendent light. Hundreds of patterns flew out from the light, and those patterns flew into the air and turned into a vague figure. This figure was obviously a woman, but her appearance was unclear. A pleasant voice transmitted over, fellow Taoist is considerate. Xuanzi thanks you. I'll leave this here as a memento. When the time comes, Mingzhan will sweep the bed. With just a few words, the figure turned into a firefly and fell into the Phoenix hairpin that stopped in the air. Looking at the large rock just now, it had now turned into a jade box. The jade box was half closed, and Xiaohua's divine sense couldn't penetrate it. Hee. Xiaohua rolled up his Taoist robe and sent Wang Bianfei to the front of the jade box. He said with a smile, quickly go, this is what Fairy Xuanzi left for you. Wang Bianfei responded and waved his hand, wanting to pick up the jade box. However, with his magic power, the jade box was as heavy as 10,000 caddies. It was not something Wang Bianfei could pick up. Master? Wang Bianfei was somewhat discouraged. Just as he was about to ask Xiaohua to help, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He saw Wang Bianfei fly in front of the mountain rock, first holding the Phoenix hairpin in his hand, then placing both hands on the jade box. The Phoenix hairpin emitted a multicolored light, and the jade box and the Phoenix hairpin resonated with each other. Wang Bianfei's hand lightened, and he effortlessly picked up the jade box. Disciple, quickly see if there's anything good inside. Xiaohua flew over with a smile and reminded, Yes, master. Wang Bianfei held the jade box with one hand and opened it with the other. Inside the jade box, there was an antique-looking scroll, and next to the scroll, there was a colored pen. The color of the colored pen was gorgeous, and the end of the pen was inlaid with a thumb-sized jade. Damn it, I really want to use it as a souvenir. Seeing that there was no cultivation technique or immortal artifact inside the jade box, Xiaohua could not help but feel a little disappointed. However, looking at Wang Bianfei's sparkling eyes, he seemed to be extremely satisfied. Just as Xiaohua was about to say something, he suddenly heard a loud boom in his ears, and the entire earth shook. Woo-woo. Whistling sounds came from the abyss, and waves of chaotic fluctuations mixed with wind blades began to rush towards Xiaohua and Wang Bei. Not good. Xiaohua was shocked and shouted, "The restrictive spell here is about to activate again. Disciple, you should return to Shenhua continent." Without waiting for Wang Bianfei to agree, Xiaohua raised his hand and took out the Kunlun mirror. He pretended to wave it in midair, and his mind had already swept Wang Bianfei and sent him into space. Go! Xiaohua roared and urged his magic power. His entire body twisted, and in a few breaths, he teleported out of the abyss. Unfortunately, Xiaohua had only teleported a few thousand feet when the restrictive spell of the entire collapsed land began to activate. Xiaohua's teleportation was already ineffective. Xiaohua had no choice but to use the earth escape and wind escape techniques to escape towards the ground. More than an hour later, a hurricane gushed out from the cracks like a fountain. Xiaohua also soared into the sky, straight into the sky. However, Xiaohua had only rushed out a few thousand feet when there was another loud bang and the earth shook again. It was exactly the same as the previous tremor. At the same time, a huge impact force pushed over from a direction. Xiaohua's body was unable to dodge in time, and he was swept several thousand feet away in an instant. Xiaohua originally wanted to escape from the restrictive spell of the collapsed land. Seeing that help was sent over, how could he not know how to use it? Under the urging of his magic power, lightning surged around his body, and he quickly rushed out along with the impact force. Seeing that the space behind him was once again enveloped by the restrictive spell of the immortal world, and his domain was torn apart by the wind blades, Xiaohua let out a long breath. Then, he narrowed his eyes and looked towards the source of the impact force. Wang Bianfei previously said that the immortal was imprisoned in the northeast direction of Tongtian Peak, and the impact force this time was coming from the southwest direction. If Wang Bianfei's location was correct, then that place should be where Tongtian Peak was located. Could it be? Xiaohua pondered. The divine weapon of Tongtian Peak has appeared? Thinking of Tongtian Peak, Xiaohua naturally thought of the crystal from Chao Tianke. There was a sentence inside, "In 100 years at the peak of Tongtian Peak, the divine weapon will appear." Xiaohua had a lot of magic weapons in his space, and he himself did not lack magic weapons. Therefore, Xiaohua did not take this sentence seriously. He even threw the crystal to the ink jade Qilin and let it go to Tongtian Peak. And during these days of searching for Tongtian Peak, Xiaohua had some doubts. The first question that came to mind was who had left this crystal behind. Actually, if it was related to Chao Tianke, Xiaohua could easily think that it must be the crystal left behind by the person or beast who built Chao Tianke. Xiaohua's heart was as clear as a mirror about the scale of Chao Tianke and what kind of power it had. That restrictive spell seemed to be more powerful than the one that trapped the immortal world's immortal in front of him. With Xiaohua's strength, even if he cultivated for 10,000 years, he would not be able to set it up. What was the purpose of such a person or beast leaving behind a divine weapon in Tongtian Peak? Xiaohua could not help but think about it. Moreover, Xiaohua had also asked Swallowing Heaven and Ink Jade Qilin. Weapons would appear in Chao Tianke every once in a while, and along with the weapons, this kind of crystal would appear. Inside the crystal, there was also this sentence, but the timing was somewhat different. In other words, the arrangement in Chao Tian Pavilion was for the divine weapon of Tongtian Peak. It was to let the prehistoric beasts who could enter Chao Tianke go to Tongtian Peak to snatch the divine weapon. Those who could enter Chao Tianke, were naturally the elites of prehistoric continent, and all of them had outstanding strength. That person or beast gathered these prehistoric beasts at Tongtian Peak just to snatch the divine weapon? Divine weapon? Xiao Hua admitted that if he had a divine weapon, he would absolutely not take it out to let others snatch it. Unless he had other thoughts. However, the Black Jade Qilin made it clear that no other prehistoric beasts had ever appeared near Chaotian Tower. None of the prehistoric beasts that had entered Chaotian Tower had ever seen a human or prehistoric beast controlling Chaotian Tower. Of course, Ink Jade Qilin's strength was especially high. If there was a prehistoric beast controlling Chaotian K, Ink Jade Qilin might not be able to detect it. Of course, besides these doubts, Xiaohua previously thought that there were many prehistoric beasts on Chaotian K that were far more powerful than him. These prehistoric beasts would go to Tongtian Peak to snatch the divine weapon, and with his strength, it would be very difficult to succeed. Therefore, Xiaohua did not care about the so-called divine weapon. After dozens of years of experience, Xiaohua suddenly discovered that this eldritch continent was not a complete eldritch continent. Not only was the heaven and earth Yuan Qi incomplete, even the eldritch beasts were not complete. He did not even see a single eldritch master, and he did not even feel their auras. Facing such a situation, Xiaohua felt that he might have a chance. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.